That's fine. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, adequate notice of the September the 12th meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting written notice and agenda of this meeting on the bulletin board in the Municipal Building, 1000 Route 10, Whippany, Township of Hanover, and by hand delivering, mailing, or faxing such notice and agenda to the following newspapers: the Hanover Eagle, Morris County's Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and by filing same with the Township Clerk. May I have a roll call, please?
Committeeman Schleifer is absent this evening. Committeeman Faramasca.
Here.
Committeeman Bruno.
Here.
Committeeman Capola.
Here.
And Mayor Francioli.
Here.
4 members in attendance, sir.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start with a pledge of allegiance to the flag, but before I do, and in conjunction with that, I would like us to take a moment of silence in recognition of the horror that took place September the 11th in 2001 and the loss of nearly 3,000 human beings in the course of that. We also tonight think about the tragedy that's ongoing right now with a terrible fire that seems to be consuming a large portion of the shore areas, Seaside Park area. But if you give me that moment of silence for the moment right now, and then we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please join me in a Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. We have a wonderful proclamation to offer tonight, and this is on a proclamation of the week of declaring September the 18th through September the 25th, St. John the Baptist Ukrainian Church Week, in recognition and celebration of the consecration of a new church on this Saturday, September the 21st, 2013. This has been a long time coming, and I know Father has been really painfully awaiting this day. Beautiful church, a beautiful facility. For me, it has a different meaning because I remember St. John's Ukrainian Church in Vailsburg, Newark, which is still there, and I was there when that was built. So don't tell me how old I am. But in any event, the Township Committee really celebrates this church being completed. It celebrates the fact that the Ukrainian population with this church has decided to still call Hanover Township its home. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And on that note, I'd like the Township Administrator to please read the proclamation, which I'm glad to offer.
Thank you. We have a motion.
So moved.
Second by Mr. Faramasco. All in favor?
Aye.
So approved. It's a proclamation of the Township Committee proclaiming the week of September 18th, 2013 through September 25th, 2013 as St. John the Baptist Ukrainian Catholic Church Week in recognition and celebration of the consecration of the new church on Saturday, September 21st, 2013. Whereas Ukrainian immigrants began settling in the Malapartis and Whippany sections of Hanover Township at the beginning of the 20th century, finding work largely in the area's paper mills. And whereas, due to the generous grant of land by Richard and Hannah McEwen, they were able to build first a small wooden church in 1922, and then a larger brick edifice in 1950, which they were able to worship God in the faith of their fathers. And whereas in 2002, this religious community, known as St. John the Baptist Ukrainian Catholic Church, was able to acquire land at 60 North Jefferson Road in the Whippany section of the township and construct first a rectory and an imposing Ukrainian-American cultural center, and now a new magnificent house of worship. And whereas their spiritual head in the United States, Archbishop Metropolitan Stefan Soroka of Philadelphia, together with 2 other Ukrainian Catholic bishops and numerous clergy, will bless the cornerstone of this new edifice on Friday, September 20th, solemnly consecrate their new church on Saturday, September 21st, and lead them in the celebration of the first Divine Liturgy in their new house of God on Sunday, September 22nd. And whereas, in grateful recognition of the many contributions made by the members of the St. John Ukrainian Catholic community, the governing body wishes to recognize our Ukrainian American brothers and sisters as they solemnly consecrate the cornerstone and church on Friday, September 20th and September 21st, 2013. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover and the County of Morrison, State of New Jersey as follows. 1. In grateful recognition of the numerous contributions of the Ukrainian American community to our township, to the State of New Jersey, and to the United States of America, and in consideration of their crowning achievements in constructing both a church and a cultural center that stand out with distinction, the governing body hereby proclaims the week of September 18th through September 25th, 2013 as St. John the Baptist Ukrainian Catholic Church Week. Secondly, the Township Committee hereby directs that the blue and gold flag of the Ukraine be flown together with the glorious flag of our republic over the municipal building. And 3, the governing body hereby calls upon all citizens of Hanover Township to join in the joyous festivities marking this momentous celebration in the life and history of our Ukrainian Catholic community. Signed, Ronald F. Francioli, Mayor, on behalf of the Township Committee.
I'd like a roll call vote.
On roll call for adoption, Mr. Fermaska.
Very pleased to motion for adoption.
Mr. Bruno.
Yes, congratulations and best of luck for another 100 years here in Hanover Township.
Mr. Capola.
Absolutely. Absolute addition to the town.
And Mr. Francioli.
Absolutely aye. Very good. Father, where are you? Take some pictures, and then our little choir here is going to give us a rendition. God bless America, right? Yes. Okay. We get out of your way.
Over here. What are we going to do without the mayor?
A lot. Good.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her from the light with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Beautiful.
On behalf of the Ukrainian American community here in Hanover Township, we'd like to thank the governing body for recognizing our contributions and the great achievements of our community. This means a lot, not simply to us, but I'm sure to our immigrants, our pioneers, the ones who, across the street, first founded our church here and watched as you were growing. The mayor was a Ukrainian. We've got our blue and yellow all over the place. So thank you very much, and we invite you, and we invite all of you to join us together on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for a glorious moment, not only in our history, but in the history of Hanover Township. God bless America. God save Ukraine.
A long time coming, a beautiful, beautiful church. If you have not had an opportunity, please take Father's invitation and join us on that weekend. That's going to be a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We've seen the community center. The community center has been beautiful, terrific food, and the church is just exquisite. No doubt about it. And long, long time in this community and a long time to come, as Bob Bruno so aptly said, another 100 years. Wonderful. Good for you. Very good. All right, before I start the meeting, I just want to give a quick little public announcement because I've been asked so much. We are going to have available the flu shots. It's that season again, folks. So if you'd like to have your flu shot, September the 30th, right here at the Recreation Center on the municipal campus from 10 to 12, and then on that same date from 3 to 5. October the 9th from 10 to 12, and October the 9th from 10 to 12, October the 30th from 10 to 12, and October the 30th from 3 to 5. You can have your flu shot right here at our rec center. And what's the age? 65 and over is for free? I think, yes, ages 65 and over, there is no cost whatsoever for the shot. And is it a $15 fee for, I think it's $15 for...
No, you know what, for 65, I think it's $8.
Yeah.
Anybody below 65, it's 15.
It's 15, that's the way it works, okay. But in any event, take advantage of it. We're looking at what potentially is going to be a rough flu season there. Okay, on that note, just from a format standpoint, we've got a lot on the agenda tonight, and I know there are a lot of people here with us tonight that want to have an opportunity to speak on certain ordinances, and we want you to have that opportunity. But what I'd like to do is some housekeeping before we do that. So I'm going to ask the administrator to go through some ordinances that we have for adoption. Each one of these ordinances has been discussed by the Township Committee at length. I'm going to ask the administrator to run down the ordinances for adoption. We're going to take it as what's known as consent agenda. He's going to read them by title. Okay. You want to take this and that? Okay. All right. All right. We're going to put this in this order. First, I want a motion for approval of the bid committee minutes of July 30th, 2013, and the regular Township Committee meeting of July the 11th, 2013.
So moved.
Moved and seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
So approved.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. On
communications?
communications, we have one item of communication from the Business Administrator Board Secretary of the Hanover Township School District requesting drawdown of tax levy monies in the amount of $2,194,394. May we have a motion for approval?
Second.
So moved by Mr. Capola, second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor?
Aye.
So approved. And then again, to accelerate the agenda, we have the Township Committee has recommended payments dealing with these three projects. We normally don't take a vote on that. That's for information purposes only. So now, ladies and gentlemen,
I'm just going to, just as a matter of protocol, there's a portion of our meeting where we open to the public, and I'm going to ask to do that. We're going to open to the public for any items not appearing on the agenda. But if you have comments relative to certain ordinances,
17, well,
yeah,
17-13.
17-13, et cetera, then at the time we introduce that, we're not introducing at the time we're going to open for that ordinance, you will have an opportunity to have the floor. And by format, when we're ready to do that, I would remind everyone that in the room that what we're going to try and do is give you a 4-minute opening for your comments at the podium so that everybody who wants to speak has an opportunity to speak. And we appreciate your cooperating with that and taking the podium at one time, unless there's some rebuttal that the committee will recognize, and I'll just allow you to come back to the podium. All right, on that note, and I'm going to go through the formality again, I'm going to open later. I'm going to open to the public for any items not appearing on the agenda. Motion to open?
So moved.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Hearing none, seeing none. Motion to close?
So-
Oh, Joe, do you want to speak?
Wait a second.
Okay.
Yes.
We have a
I'm
member of
sorry.
the public.
All right.
I don't want to interfere with the rest of the meeting.
You want to speak to the, if you're going to speak to the ordinance, I'm going to give you that time, but you want to,
No. I'm not addressing the ordinance.
okay.
I must say to my brothers and sisters of the Ukrainian origin, Dobry вечер, which means good evening. And Father Roman, no hayalita, which means live to be 100. Departing from my scripted thing here kind of throws me off, but I'm going to
Name and
prelude.
address for the record, Joe.
I'm sorry, as many times as I've done this.
Sorry, Joe.
Is Joe Mahalko, 12 Anna Terrace,
Thank you.
Whippany section of Hanover Township.
Thank you.
I gotta get that straight.
I had attended the planning board meeting last night, the other night, Tuesday, I guess it was, and I gleaned some information that upset me a little bit, so I have to address that. First of all, the number 1,522. We say, what is that number? That number happens to represent total occupied and presently under construction multifamily dwellings. 1,522. Proposed, which is a ambivalent number, we're looking at possibly another 1,400 plus multi-family units. Now, that number, I grant you, will probably not reach the totality, but it is a proposal. My remarks. Hanover Township presently has about 19 boards, commissions, and committees. I would like to propose we add one more to make it an even 20. And we call it the Common Sense Committee. And that all groups must submit their wants, desires, and proposals to this committee before it is voted on and approved by any entity and the public. As I have gotten older, but not necessarily wiser, my recollection of past administrations were always a group of dedicated people that brooked no influence from so-called developers that had no vested interest in building what is the best for this town versus how much they could line their pockets. If there was a need for a ball field, we built it with sweat equity. On this very site, we built our first official Little League field, not provided by any outsider so that they could get a zoning change to construct whatever they deemed they needed. Times have changed. This new generation has bred a new philosophy that if we can get someone else to foot the bill, it's okay to trade off the integrity that built this town in the first place. I have lived in this community for 73 plus years, and it offends me to have someone tell me I have no vision. This town has sold out some of its principles
I hope it does not sell out its heart.
I don't know whether I want to respond to that. Joe, you know that.
I do.
Okay.
That's why
I appreciate your comments. I do take exception to the fact that this township has lost integrity. I don't think that comment was necessary. I think that the intention of this township committee has always put Hanover Township before any self-interest and will continue to do so.
I accept it.
You were right in that the numbers that were quoted are just numbers. There's not a developer alive that isn't going to come into this township and want to maximize the use of their property. Where they could put 2, they're going to want to put 10. Where they could put 10, they want to put 100. It doesn't mean they get approved by the planning board. It doesn't mean they get accepted through. And as you did hear on Tuesday night, some very strong comments about the amount of units that were still proposed. The numbers of dwelling units that you quoted out there have been with this township for quite a few years, 30 that I know of. Sterling's got some 300-odd apartment units right here on Cedar Knolls Road. Always been there. It's part of the numbers that you threw out there, right? We have five COA housing projects, at least 200 to 300 units in each one of those projects to satisfy the COA requirement. All adds up to the numbers that you threw out there. The only numbers that you threw out there, which we're going to get exceptions to, are the proposed numbers that are before us. And you're correct. Ain't going to happen, all right? But we have work to do on that, and we're going to do it as a community together. Whether or not we've got consideration over the zonings in the past, exchanges for density, transfer of development rights, ball fields that were given to us, lands that were not useful to developers that were giving up to public use zones, ball fields that were built for us, acted as a quid pro quo. Yeah, the developer benefited, but so did Hanover Township benefit. Millions of dollars worth of parks were built in this town, but not at your taxpayers' dollars. As far as I'm concerned, I still would be ignorant if I didn't consider that on anything that we do. Having said that, I don't want to prolong it, but and I appreciate your comments. I'm sure by the wonderful round of applause you got that the audience appreciated them too. On that note, if there are
I
any
just
other...
do want to say something on behalf of the planning board. The planning board's #1 objective is to promote public safety. One of the biggest obligations in regards to public safety that your planning board took on was to remove from this town over 80 barrels of highly carcinogenic oils that were left over from old commercial property. Colloid on Cedar Knolls Road. That could have been left there,
Row International.
and you could have fit the bill for $3 million to clean it up. But the planning board worked arduously for years, trying to come up with a way on how to get that cleaned up to residential status. As a result of that, and as a result of laws that are beyond Hanover Township, the state of New Jersey blesses us with a 4-letter word called COAH, called COA. We have 126 apartments that will be built on that location. So the trade-off was a brownfield, or do we have a major cleanup to residential standards? So there is logic. The planning board does not do things willy-nilly. They take significant investments of their time. They meet 3 times a month. They invest probably 15 hours of their time per month. If you want to come out and participate and listen to the dialogue in their meetings, it's the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Tuesday of the month. Many of those individuals are sitting in this room tonight, and they are very, very interested in making Hanover Township the best place it can be.
Thank you. The floor is still open at this point. Again, if you have comments that you want to make upon a... I'm sorry. Joe? George.
Yeah, I would like to comment on this. Joe, you and I believe, are good friends, and I truly take exception to that comment, okay? Yeah, I've seen things change in town. I volunteered my life for 50 years to the communities, okay, in every capacity, including the emergency squad, plus my service to my country, the whole 9 yards. And I think that, yeah, has some things changed? Has the philosophy in some ways changed? Yeah, I think they have. But I think a lot of it has helped the taxpayers in not seeing the cost being burdened by them. You know, we all forget, 2009, when I first got on this committee, we didn't have money to do Township Day. We didn't have $20,000 to do Township Day. We had nothing. We were going from hand to mouth when trying to find where we were going to get the money to do what we had to do. And even throughout all of that, it was unfortunate that we had to lay people off and cut the time on other people. So I think the committee has worked hard, has really done a lot. Yes, you can all think that things have changed, but a lot of these different things that have been provided for to the community have been provided without a cost to each and every one. I spoke with a gentleman just this past Saturday at Township Day, and this gentleman comes from Randolph, and he's paying twice the taxes of what we pay here for not even all of the services that we receive. So, you know, I think we're pretty blessed, I think, and I'm not just gonna say for myself, I think for the many committee people who were here before, who built the basis for what we have today. And for that, I really am appreciative and thankful that I could serve the community. But, you know, I just think sometimes the choice of a word can cut pretty deep, all right? Especially when you're giving your time. And, you know, I know nobody's telling me I have to. I do it because I love it. I do it because I enjoy it, and I like it serving the community. I like serving the residents, and I love doing things for people. So let's not forget what we were at and where we're at today. We're very fortunate. Things are starting to turn around. We're starting to get some good neighbors, and these are the good neighbors that are helping us to live comfortably with the services we like and not getting hit with a lot of taxes. So.
Thank you, George. Appreciate that. Once again, I remind, I'm sorry,
If I may,
Fred.
Mayor, just if I may make a general comment. I understand there's a lot of emotion when you talk about various legislation and things like that and policy.
Haven't even gotten to the ordinance yet.
Right, but that's for everyone who sits here and has difficult decisions to make. But I just want to remind everybody, it's a public meeting. And what you say at a public meeting is forever in the minutes of the municipality, and it's part of the permanent record. It's part of the reflection of people's opinion of a community. So I think, just to echo the concerns and the sentiment of some of the members of the Township Committee, sure, it's always healthy to express your opinion. But when you use certain words and make certain statements, they're forever part of the public record. And that not only hurts and offends certain officials in the township, but it's something that I don't think is really customary to the township, and what I've always seen in meetings and public meetings, because you know, we all are here together, and when you make those statements, they're against your fellow residents. So I just say, be mindful of the fact that when you make statements, whatever emotion you may have, you really can't necessarily take it back because it's part of the permanent record. You could always try to clarify what you said or withdraw it, but it's there forever in a public meeting. So, thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Again, I remind us here that the floor is still open, and anyone who would like to address the Township Committee at this time. Joe, you're not going to relieve the floor to this other gentleman? You want a counterpoint. Go ahead.
Rebuttal. Joe Mahalco, 12 Anna Terrace, Whippany section of Hanover Township. I thoroughly respect your admonitions. I accept them as I hoped you had accepted my comments, which were my own comments. I have never, did not, will not indicate to impugn the integrity of the people I am facing. I had mentioned prior to this meeting to your group what I was going to possibly say, and I asked for your indulgences. You've given it to me. It's my opinion. I expressed it. I thank Fred for his comments. They're on record.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. The floor is still open if anyone else would like to address the Township Committee. I'm also reminded by council that the request that I made for 4 minutes on comment when we get to the ordinance portion, it's been decided by other powers that you get 5 minutes. So just as a point of order. But in any event, gentlemen, name and address for the record.
Sure. Tom Malooly from 7 Hickory Place, Cedar Knolls section of town. I don't know Joe. I was actually going to get up and
You don't
stick up for him, but I think he did a good enough job doing that himself. Can you guys please, I'm sorry, gentlemen, please remind me what it was that caused you to take offense and want to kind of reprimand the gentleman? Can you remind me what comment that was?
I did not reprimand the gentleman, and if you want to know what offended the office here, in my position, is a comment that we have degraded the township and degraded our policies here in Hanover Township. That's a compromise that we'll never accept.
Okay, so we can get into semantics all night long, and we can choose better words. The truth of the matter is, and I'm not going to be nearly as eloquent as Joe, the truth of the matter is there are a lot of changes going on right now in town. And when I moved to town, I was amazed at how many people that actually grew up here stayed here and raised their families here. So these are the people that you're
These gentlemen too.
These are the people that you're now hearing from. And I hear people talking about removing oil slicks and Randolph people paying double the taxes for less services. We have no idea the impact of all of this development. So it might look great in the near term to widen our tax base. But where is it headed? Where is it 3 years from now? Where is it 5 years from now? Do you guys extrapolate? Do you guys forecast? I don't know that you can even do that.
Yes, we do.
So maybe our taxes go from 10 to...
Yes, we do.
I'm going to try to finish my 5 minutes, please. So maybe our taxes go from 8 or 10 now to 15. And I heard someone say, we just got 178 units in Saddlebrook off of Horse Hill. Did someone actually say that we're due to get 165 more? It's a result of all of the development that's being approved, and we have to keep our COH-AH ratios up. Stop the development. What's wrong with some trees? We don't need it. Whippany Road backs up every night between 4:30 and 6. We can't even get our kids to soccer practice. Ridgedale Avenue, which never backed up, is backed up from the 7-Eleven almost all the way down to Walmart now, regularly. Are you guys going to put in double-decker streets next? I mean, it's out of control. And you know what? Joe's words were tame compared to what's going on out on the streets when neighbors meet by the mailbox. You guys are being accused of some things that you'd really take offense to. We feel like, particularly the Saddlebrook development, I feel like, and not me, many people, and I can't believe there aren't more here tonight, many people feel like that was snuck in the dead of night. We woke up in July or August and we heard that there were going to be X number of new kids in our schools. We heard that there was this forced community integration coming from the Mount Laurel doctrine from 75. I mean, we're all getting an education. We have to slow it down. We have to do what's right for our community today and what's right that we can actually endure and handle within the capacity of our infrastructure. And no offense, gentlemen, but it doesn't appear as though, never mind. I don't know how many of you gentlemen have children in the school system, but it impacts us a lot more with children in school than it might for people without children in school. Maybe that's a way I can phrase it. I know you say that this agenda was published. It's handed out, faxed out, mailed out, put in the Daily Record. But let's face it, people are working hard to raise their families. So putting a couple of notices out and then expecting to get full participation in these meetings, it's not going to work. So these things are being decided by very few members of a committee, maybe this committee or maybe other committees. And I don't think it's representative of the community, even though those voices might not be being heard. Thank you for your time.
I don't have anything written because I did not expect to speak. My name is Mary Connor. I live at 5 Jock Terrace in Whippany. I feel like my father was born in this town. I am one of those people. My dad was born here. He was born in a house right next there, next to the municipal building. He sat on this board for 40 years. 40 of those years, I didn't see my dad at night half the time because he was here to make this town a good town. And my dad took a lot of pride in this town. I took so much pride that I stayed here. My sister stayed here. We raised our children. I work in the school system because I feel like I'm coddling and nurturing the Hanover Township children. And I feel like I'm giving back to all the wonderful things that they gave me. I raised 2 daughters here. They have now purchased homes in the township, and they want to start a family. The things that I did when yes, those things maybe can't happen. I fished in the Whippany River. I walked down on the banks of the Whippany River. I enjoyed everything that this town had to offer. As for safety, it was a safe town, very safe town. You always knew your neighbor. You knew this one, and you felt like you could go out and about all the time. We didn't have to worry about walking down a road that we may be hit by a car because we have so much traffic. 18-wheelers driving down Whippany Road, driving down Ridgedale. I can tell all the time when 24 is backed up. They're barreling down. They don't care. I am just asking for everyone. I'm pleading with you to continue the vision. I don't care. If I have to pay a little more taxes to have quality of life for my children and my grandchildren and continue to live in a township that I so much love, I will do that. But don't sell us short. I feel right now like Hanover Township has not become a town. We are a pass-through. We are a way for somebody to get from point A to point B, and eventually nobody's going to call it their home. It's just going to be a place where people pass by. And having more multifamily homes than we have single, what does that mean? We're going to have transient people in town. We're not going to have the Soccer family that put their roots here, that helped to build that church over there, and took such pride in this township. So I just am pleading with you. Please listen to the people. Nobody is angry. We just want to maintain the township that we so much love. Thank you.
Thank you. The floor is still open. Michael?
Michael Mahalko, Nye Avenue, Whippany section. If I get 2.5 minutes now, can I have another 2.5 minutes later? The issues are linked. I'm going to be speaking later about 1713, Ordinance 1713, but the issues are linked. We're concerned. We're concerned about the development. We're concerned about the amount of high-density housing coming in. I was at the meeting on Tuesday. I went through a myriad of emotions sitting there listening. Everything from I wanted to scream to I wanted to throw up to, geez, thank goodness somebody's at least saying we're going to try and control it. I think we need to try to control it more. The numbers we're talking are scary numbers. I did a little digging. The Hanover Township in Morris County is one of the best in taxes, meaning it has some of the lowest taxes. The towns that have the highest taxes, and the reason for this, well, good management, of course, is the reason. But when you look at the multifamily unit ratio to the single-family home ratio, as you get higher up the ladder, that ratio increases. There's a direct correlation. That man that sat there and told you that nothing would happen, I can't believe that. That's not true. There's a direct correlation to these towns. The higher the ratio, the more multifamily units we have, the higher the taxes go. It affects the schools, it affects the classrooms, which we're going to get to later, I'm sure, also. That needs to be concerned. You guys have done a fantastic job. The town has done a fantastic job maintaining where we're at. We want to see it this way. I speak to literally hundreds of people, and not one of them says, geez, I wish we had more condos. They said, Jay, I moved to this town because I wanted a single-family home. I moved to this town because it's a neighborhood. We need to maintain that. And again, I know that there's maybe some type of quid pro quo going on. We have Bayer coming in. I know they want housing. But at what point? How much are we for sale? What are we sacrificing? This is quality. We all drove here. We knew the traffic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
We have one more minute?
Name and
I'm
address.
Nancy Bergamasco. I live on Reynolds Avenue in Whippany.
Speak right into that microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Nancy Bergamasco. I live on 85 Reynolds Avenue in Whippany. And I haven't been able to make it to the meetings because I have 2 daughters, although my husband is home. They did specifically tell my husband they were going to give him a hard time tonight about going to bed, so I had to put them to bed before I came. And we moved to Whippany from Mendham and Milburn because of the small neighborhood, because neither one of us would have been able to afford the taxes in Milburn or Mendham where we grew up because of the McMansions and the taxes in those towns. We came here, we saw it, we loved it. I have a huge lot. It's 75 by about 300. And when I initially heard about all these meetings about the building and all that, I thought, wait, if I come in and I want to change something as a single homeowner, are you going to give me that courtesy to have meetings and say, oh, well, I'd like a pole barn in the back of my yard. We have a few vehicles. I'd like to be able to tuck my tractor in. I'd like to be able to tuck the kids' storage stuff in, but I can't get a detached garage. I've been to 2 builders. My detached garage price is about $50,000. I don't have it, and personally, I don't like how it's going to look to attach to my garage now and to go in my backyard. So I'm stuck with stacking stuff up, maybe adding another small shed. And my only thought is, would the town be willing to sway for my detached garage? Or is that a law that is so set now that no one's ever allowed to have a attached garage? Because that's what I hear to people, friends, neighbors, builders, oh, we've tried that before, no one ever gets a detached garage. So my feeling is you have a builder coming in who wants to change the rules for him so he can build his little condos or his townhouses. And we've done all this time for him, 4, 5, 6 meetings, all these people coming here, and he wants the laws changed. I understand it's for homes, for people to live in, but are you willing someday to do that for someone like me who wants my detached garage, who my neighbors are like, oh, that's a great idea for what you need. But are you going to be willing to do that for the single homeowner who wants to change something for them? Because they need something for their yard that makes sense, that might be very tasteful design, that'd be in the back of my property, that wouldn't bother anyone. So that's kind of my thoughts on what's been happening, all of this, that you're still willing to change it for a builder, but would you be willing to change something for the individual homeowners? And there's probably other people in this town who would be in the same situation. It's just a thought, have everyone think about where one individual homeowner comes in who will probably be affected by the school traffic. I can barely back out of my driveway in the morning to take my own kids to school, but in my head I go, okay, wait for that break, get out there and go. The kids need to go to school and it'll be done in 10 minutes. So thank you for your time.
Hi, Regan Russell, 23 Salem Drive North in Whippany. I have nothing planned but the comments. I put a petition out last year with over 150 signatures for speed humps on my street because of the congestion in our town, because of the speed going down to our school. I'm afraid my children are going to be killed. Do you know when the speed was looked at? When school was let out and there were no sports going on. That's when they looked at how fast people were going on my street for a speed study. Nothing was done. The more kids we have in our schools, the more people we have using our sports fields who don't give a crap about my street, come down like it's a freeway. And I'm afraid that some of the children, someone's going to be killed, and that's when someone's going to finally do something. And I'm sorry, I'm upset about it. We do not need more people in this town. We need our people to come together and care about us as a community. That's why we live here. That's why we moved here, and that's why we want to raise our children here. Because we care about each other and we care about their safety. If we're going to bring all these people, we better look at some bigger safety measures for our kids. Because I know my street is not the only one that we have people flying around because the traffic is too horrible for people to get to work on time. They have to get their kids dropped off. They have to get to work so they can keep their jobs so they can pay for their homes. So we're going to bring more people in. We better start looking at how we're going to make it safer for our kids.
The floor is still open if anybody else would like to comment. Hearing none. I'll count slow. Seeing none. Motion to close.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, bear with us. We're just going to do an ordinance portion. I will open the floor once again on the pending ordinance on 62-66 North Jefferson, and I suppose that is what most of us want to comment on. On that note, if the administrator would read the ordinances for consent agenda, we'll just move on those.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in order to accelerate the process, the township attorney has advised that we can take 7 ordinances together as a consent agenda, so that if anyone wishes to speak on any of the 7 ordinances that I'm going to read into the record, you may do so and just indicate which ordinance you're commenting on. The ordinances are as follows. 23-13, authorizing the purchase of 1 new 31 cubic yard automated sanitation collection truck with a right articulated arm, plus related equipment and options to purchase 95-gallon Schaefer Universal containers or approved equal, 1 tipper and 1 reversible snow plow for the Public Works, Buildings and Grounds, Maintenance Department, and further authorizing the appropriation of $500,000 from the Capital Improvement Fund of 2013 and all prior years for the acquisition. Ordinance 24-13, authorizing the purchase of a maximum of 32 Heckler & Koch Universal self-loading pistols, 40 caliber handguns for the police department, and further authorizing the appropriation of $20,000 from the Capital Improvement Fund of 2013 and all prior years for the acquisition. These are replacement weapons for police officers. Ordinance 2513 establishes salaries of patrolmen, sergeants, and detectives of the township for calendar years 2009, 10, 11, 12, and 13, based on an arbitration award issued on June 30th, 2013. Ordinance 26-13, a capital ordinance, modifying and replacing 3 overhead doors of the Public Works garage and appropriating $80,000 from the Capital Improvement Fund of 2013 and all prior years. Ordinance 27-13, capital ordinance, replacement of natural gas emergency generator for the Public Works garage and appropriating the sum of $110,000 from the Capital Improvement Fund of 2013 and all prior years. Ordinance 2813, also capital ordinance, upgrading of the emergency gas generator located at the municipal building and police headquarters and appropriating $50,000 from the Capital Improvement Fund of 2013 and all prior years. And finally, land use ordinance number 29-13, amending Chapter 166 of the Code by revising the regulations for the OB, the OBDS, the IB, and IB3 zone districts pertaining to the sale or rental of motor vehicles, mobile homes, trailers, and campers. May we now have a motion to convene the public hearing on all of the ordinances read by title into the record.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Mr. Fermaska, seconded by Mr. Bruno. On roll call, Mr. Fermaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Franciola.
Aye.
Is there anyone in chambers wishing to be heard concerning any of the 7 ordinances read into the record? Name and address for the record, please.
Judy Irati, 27 Malaportis Road, Whippany, New Jersey. And I'd like to comment on ordinance number 26-13. I believe last year, when the issue came up of the new sanitation truck not fitting into the garage, I quoted a figure of approximately $80,000 to modify the doors so the trucks could go in. And I was told at that time that it will be nowhere near there, more like $5,000 or $6,000. And actually, the comment was they don't know where I got my figures from. So now I see tonight, it is $80,000 to modify the doors, so I'd like to know what's changed since last July until now.
3 doors, not 1. That's the first change. The second change is the number that was originally quoted, I think, in the newspapers, Judy, that you had said was about $150,000 to do a door. We, at that time, looked at the idea of about $25,000 to $30,000 per door. Well, it looks like this spec came in at $28,000 per door, but we're doing 3 doors.
Okay, so last year when it was quoted, I believe in the paper, to $5,000 or $6,000, that was for one door?
$5,000 or $6,000 for 1 door? No,
I thought it was under $10,000 to make the modification.
$28,000 per door.
So it's $20,000, more than $20,000 a door. Now,
Where did that number, what number are you, what number?
oh, the $80,000, it's what?
Is
More
for
than
3, is to
right.
reduce,
Each door.
3 doors.
So each door cost over $25,000. 3 doors, $75,000, 8,000. Good.
3 doors around $25,000 to
Okay.
$28,000.
So last year, the figure for one door was the same?
In my opinion, to the papers, $20,000 to $25,000.
Okay, I'll look up that article. I might be misled. Thank you.
Mr. Lent is here. He can quote me if you like.
You say he always gets everything
know.
wrong, so I don't.
It's not $150,000 a door, Judy. Thank you very much. Anyone else like to be heard on the ordinances?
Bill Kaner, 26 Hamilton Court, ordinance number 2413. What's the need for new purchase of weapons for the police department?
Bill, the weapons that we've had, the .40 caliber weapons, are going on some, I'm going to say some 25 years old now, at least. The standing joke in Hanover Township, which I'm glad to say, is why do you need new weapons? You never fired the old ones.
I
And
was
that's a
thinking
good
that.
thing.
That's why I asked the question.
And that's a good thing. But the other good thing about the weapons is that we qualify for them every year for 25 years. So they're fired several times a year. And the second thing about the particular upgrade on the weapons is that after this amount of time, our department has identified, and with outside consultants, the fact that the spring mechanisms in some of the weapons is now beginning to fail. I think the last thing in the world the Township Committee wants is an officer to be out in the street with a weapon that's not going to be dependable. So these weapons will be traded in, and they will be, we'll be given credit for the weapons. They'll be upgraded by some other organization that'll upgrade them and sell them probably, and we'll buy with the difference in those dollars the new weapons.
And self-loading, I assume, means the magazine. It says self-loading,
Yeah.
the magazine. Spring-loaded magazine,
Yeah.
yeah. It doesn't self-load by itself or something.
Self-loading means that the officer can pull the trigger and it will strip off a
Right,
shell.
that's
In a regular automatic, he has to strip a shell off. In a time of an emergency, the officer
Okay.
does not want to have to cock the gun or load the gun.
I didn't have the technical terms, but you answered
Bill,
my
that
question.
terminology is directly from the
That's-
manufacturer.
That's the way it works.
I just didn't understand it, that's all. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Bill. Would anyone else like to be heard on any of the ordinances being proposed here?
We'll also note for the record, all these ordinances appeared in full in the August 15th, 2013 issue of the Daily Record. Does anyone else wish to comment on any of the ordinances? Okay, seeing none, hearing none, may we have a motion to close on the public hearing on ordinances 2313 through 29-13. So moved by Mr. Capola.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bruno. On roll call for adoption of the ordinances as a consent agenda, Mr. Faramasca,
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Franciolo.
Aye.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 ordinances for introduction this evening. First is docketed as ordinance number 30-13. This is an ordinance of the Township Committee authorizing the resurfacing of Melanie Lane from its intersection with Algonquin Parkway to the border of East Hanover Township, and appropriates the sum of $270,000 for the improvement. I'd like to point out that of the $270,000, $145,000 will be coming from a grant through the New Jersey Department of Transportation's fiscal year 2013 municipal aid program, and $125,000 which was appropriated by the Township Committee during the budget work session through the road construction and reconstruction account. As capital ordinance, this ordinance will be further considered for adoption at the Township Committee meeting on the 10th of October. And at that time, at 8:30 p.m., anyone wishing to be heard concerning the ordinance will be given the opportunity to speak. And the ordinance and the notice of introduction will appear in full in the daily record in accordance with law. So at this time, may we have a motion for introduction?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Bruno.
Second.
Second by Mr. Faramasca. On roll call, Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So introduced. And we have ordinance number 31-13, ladies and gentlemen. This is an ordinance of the Township Committee authorizing the acquisition by purchase or eminent domain, if necessary, of portions of real property known as Block 5801, lots 1.02, 1.03, 2, 3, and 5, and in Block 4301, lots 1 and 2.01, and in Block 4204, lots 1 and 6.01, as set forth on the tax map of the Township of Hanover. And all of these possible acquisitions pertain to the realignment and improvement of the intersection of Parsippany and Whippany Roads. This ordinance will be further considered for public hearing and final passage at the September 26th meeting of the Township Committee at 8:30 p.m. And once again, at that time, any person wishing to be heard concerning the ordinance will be given the opportunity to speak. So at this time, may we have a motion to introduce ordinance 31-13?
So moved.
So moved by
Second.
Mr. Francioli, seconded by Mr. Bruno. On roll call for introduction, Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola. And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
And this ordinance, too, will be published in full with the notice of introduction in the daily record. Agenda, I would ask that if any member of the governing body may be involved with any of those raffle applications, that they so abstain themselves from the vote. So do we have any member of the Township Committee that needs to abstain?
Yes.
Yes, Mr.
On the
Capola.
Knights of Columbus.
Okay, so that'll be the raffle application for Monsignor John J. Sharon Assembly, 4th District, Knights of Columbus,
And Elizabeth Dancy.
and Elizabeth Ann Seton Council. So Mr. Capola will be refraining from voting on 2676 and 2680. So at this time, may we have a motion to approve the consent agenda
So
for
moved.
the raffle applications? We have a motion by Mr. Francioli.
I'm going to refrain from 2682 as a member of the Booster Club. Otherwise, aye.
Okay. And so we'll note for the record on the abstaining by Mr. Bruno for the Booster Club and Mr. Capola on the two dealing with the Knights of Columbus. So on roll call, Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye, also exclude me from the American Legion.
And we'll so note that for the record. We'll exclude you from the vote on the American Legion. And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the last item on the administrator's agenda before we move to ordinance 17-13 is we need to pay our bills, $5,024,163.07. So we need to vote on payment of bills.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Francioli and Mr. Faramasca. On roll call, Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola. And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
We're going to go back to the resolutions. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving ahead with the speed of lightning. So we've got the resolutions, and I'll just note for the record that the resolutions will be taken also consent agenda in unison, except that we do have one additional resolution for the record that was discussed by the Township Committee during the personnel work session before the beginning of this meeting. And that is a resolution of the Township Committee appointing Krista M. DeGiorgio as the Township's replacement full-time Executive Secretary 2 in the Administration Department for a 6-month probationary period commencing September 23rd, 2013, and ending March 23rd, 2013, and establishing her compensation at $43,000 per annum under Job Group 7 in accordance with Salary Guide C of Salary Ordinance 15-13. And so that there's no misunderstanding, my name is Joe Giorgio. The appointee is Krista D. Giorgio. There is no relationship whatsoever. So just so that there's no criticism on any nepotism.
This employee will be coming in conservatively at least $26,000 less than, what's the number on that?
$26,600 less.
Under the present paid position. So that's, we're starting at that level, and that's a great savings to we taxpayers.
Are there any questions by any members of the governing body concerning any of the consent agenda resolutions? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Capola.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ferramasca. On roll call, Mr. Ferramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Capola. And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, now I relinquish to you to proceed with ordinance 17-13.
Thank you, Mr. Giorgio. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to propose for final reading, and at this particular time, Joe, you have the copy of that ordinance?
Yes. We need a motion at this time, ladies and gentlemen,
To open.
the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a
Second.
motion by Mr. Bruno,
Second.
second by Mr. Ferramasca.
All in favor? Yeah. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay.
Can,
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, I just want to remind us all, we're going to impose, we know everyone has a comment to make. We hope you'll be kind in them to us. And as such, we'll provide 5 minutes of, to each of you at the podium. I would hope that you would give other people who want to comment the opportunity to do so by taking the podium for one session of that. If
two
there's,
ministerial items that we have to read into the record.
yeah,
Mr. Mayor, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
Just for the benefit of the public,
Yeah.
in accordance with the municipal land use law, the ordinance and the notice of introduction appeared in full in the Daily Record on the 29th of August, and this is a requirement by law, and also a requirement by law that everyone within 200 feet of the proposed zone change be notified by certified mail and regular mail. And finally, that the notice of the introduction of the ordinance be submitted to the planning board for review and recommendation, which it was, and also filed with the Morris County Department of Planning and Development, and also sent to all the 5 contiguous municipalities to Hanover Township. So those ministerial requirements under the law were complied with.
All right, again, this is ordinance 17-13. This is a land use and zone classification change for block 9202, lot 15, known as 62-66 North Jefferson Road, presently an R40 zone or 40,000 square foot lot. To be proposed is an R10A zone, which is 10,000, less than 10,000 square foot lots. And at this time, I will open a motion to open the floor for comment on
So
this
moved.
ordinance at this point. All right, moved by
Second.
Member Bruno, seconded by Member Ferramasca. The floor is open. Again, ladies and gentlemen, even though it seems repetitious, for the record, we will need your name and address.
And Mayor, may I just say one thing
Go ahead.
as
Yeah.
a point of interest? Mayor, if I may, this is a public hearing with respect to the ordinance, so the comments that are directed to the ordinance are as well made part of the permanent record. I should also note that the last time zoning for this property was considered for a public hearing, this governing body defeated that ordinance at the conclusion of the public hearing. And so the comments are certainly important. But I also just want to point out that I know there's some materials that have been disseminated or discussed, or there's been some discussion about the fact regarding school-age children. And I just want to point out that the courts have time and again advised that municipalities may not zone in a manner to restrict the number of families in a municipality or to restrict or control the number of school-age children and keep down local educational cost. And the Supreme Court has said, and this is what we're tied to, such restrictions are so clearly contrary to general welfare as to not require further discussion. So I just point that out, that while certainly you may want to make a lot of points and relevant facts, understand that the comments you make regarding the legislation of school cost or school-age children or families, there's nothing that the Township Committee can, from a legal perspective, legislate and do. That's how all the affordable housing litigation was initiated and things of that nature. So while there's other points and things that the committee would be in a position to respond to and consider, that's one consideration that's prohibited, whether it be by the planning board or the Township Committee. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Again, the floor has been open, and name and address for the record, Joseph.
Joe Mahalko, 12 Anna Terrace, the Whippany section of Hanover Township. I would ask the mayor and the esteemed committee, notice I'm trying to make up, if it might not be beneficial to both parties, the developer and those that are concerned to this particular ordinance, to take a 5 to 7 minute break to have the pictorials that the developer has brought in, so that we may have an opportunity to inspect them.
Absolutely.
Before we make comments.
That's fine. The committee agreeable to a 5-minute break?
Absolutely. I think it's a
Joe,
very good
I
idea.
think what we'll do, Joe, is put them out. Let's have them.
Put them out on a
Jerry,
table.
Jerry, can you have those up on the easel?
On the table.
Spread those out.
Spread them across the table.
We'll lay 'em out.
Easier. Better idea. We'll help you, Joe. Relax. We'll help.
Yeah. I guess. I think that would be smart. You're not really going to do is sit here and take comments. Wrong as they are, uninformed. So he's pushing for this business side, isn't he? Putting out the quarterly, like we're talking about economic development. I'm talking putting out quarterly mail fees. It's going because they don't come up, nobody else is still on the web. You're never going to change the mind. So this door is
Yeah, exactly.
all right. And the vote is unanimous. Ah.
Let's do our best, Sandra.
That worked. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I hope everyone's had an opportunity to look over the visual aids that's put out for you. I'm sure you're going to have your questions, and I'm sure you're going to have your comments. We have members of the planning board who are with us tonight, as well as Director of Planning, John Faramasca, is with us, so we're going to do our best to try and answer any questions that you have. So before we adjourn, the floor was opened, and I'm going to return to that status. The floor is open, If you'd like to address the Township Committee on ordinance 17-13, you can do so from the podium, giving us your name and address for the record, and there will be a 5-minute clock. Michael, your minute starts now.
It'll be quick this time, quicker. Michael Mahalko, Nye Avenue. These pictures, although they're trying to make it look bad, that's been cleaned up already. Somebody came in, took all the scrap out. This is buried behind the building. I'm the one that has to look at this. I'd rather look at that or what's left than this, but I digress. We came before you guys a year ago. This was a breath away from being 34 condos, 45 feet high, 30-something feet off of my property. It was an abomination. It was not what should have been there. You guys voted it down. We said we wanted single-family homes. You went to the developer and said, single-family homes, this is too dense. He came back with this. He came back with 26 family homes. Then he came down to 16. Well, we know this. You guys know. It's been trickle down. Now we're at 15. Let me put this into perspective. These single-family homes, we said we wanted a neighborhood. We wanted neighbors. Mr. Bruno, if they were to put these homes on your property, there'd be 6.5 of them. Mr. Coppola, there would be 3.5 of them on your property. Mr. Faramasca, 3. Mr. Schleifer is 3.5, but he's not here. Mr. Francioli, about 2.5. That's not a neighborhood. It's a condo split up. All you did was slice it open. This is not a neighborhood. There's no outside. There's no backyard. The ordinance also allows for 35-foot setbacks where deemed appropriate. So that means they could come in there, petition to get a 35-foot setback. Nowhere in town is a rear yard 35 feet for residential. Why are we allowing it here? It troubles me that we're considering this. Again, it's a blighted property, I agree. It was on the market for a month, maybe a month and a half. It was up for sale before it was put under contract. This is not a property, Kathy's Corner, that's been up for sale for years and years and years. It's an eyesore that everybody that drives down Whippany has to see. This is not the case. This is a property, right now it's an open field. I don't mind an open field. I would like to see neighbors. I would like to see houses. Some other people will get into the density. One more point. We talk about the COA. We understand this is a constraint that you have to work with, and you guys have done a great job trying to wrestle with this thing, even though we don't even know what it's going to go, where it's going to be. I learned a lot of that on Tuesday. But won't adding these units make us put more COA in to exacerbate the problem on the COA end? I came 3 months ago. I asked one question. What's the benefit? Is there a benefit? Is there a benefit for the town?
You were asking, you want a response on that?
If you have one, please.
I don't want to interrupt your time.
No, okay. This is my final.
I'll
What's
come
the
back
what's
to
the
that,
benefit?
and I've just noted it down, but go ahead.
Yeah. What's the benefit? It's residential. It's not a rateable. It will cost us money. Again, I looked at the figures. The more high-density housing you have, taxes go up. Time and time again. There is none with high density, high density, that have low taxes. Thank you very much for your time. I didn't get an answer either. Do we have an answer?
Michael, you rightfully asked what's the benefit, and you've asked that in the past too. And I think the planning board had studied this, and of course, you have a comment in regard to the fact that, yes, this started out as 36 odd units or 35 odd units, and then came back, and then it was 32 odd units, and then comes back. But one of the things I had to respond to is that the process is such that the planning board has no control over a developer who wants to come in and out and pay his concept fees to be seen before the planning board 20 times, 50 times. I mean,
Understandable.
The bottom line is, and that what you want and what I want, the bottom line is what finally is acceptable and not a detriment to what the law says, the detriment to the zone plan or the planning board of the township. I think when the planning board, pardon me?
I'm sorry. What the attorney said, and I don't know his name, what he said before, the way I construed what you said was pretty much there's no such thing as zoning. If we don't do what people want, we're going to get sued. Why do we have to change it? I guess the question is, why would we have to change it? Why do we have to change this?
There is a why do we have to change it?
Well, we have to change it to allow this. Why do we have to allow
The
this?
basic reason for any zone change, such as the one we're considering several zone changes in the town, you know that.
Yes.
You're on the fire company, you're a commissioner on the fire company, you know exactly what's going on in that area. And we're proposing a major zone change from Route 287 right down to the Algonquin Parkway, east and west on 287, from 287 down on Route 10. And that zone change, in the planning board's opinion, was part of a year-long study to start finally upgrading the community, taking properties that are either demised or not being utilized in the best possible way and trying to get better use out of them. They did the same thing on Hanover Avenue. They took zones which were small several-acre zones. They created only 10-acre lots on Hanover Avenue from Ridgedale Avenue up to American Way. Why'd they do that? They're trying to attract better brands, better uses, more upscale.
I get it. I understand that.
So I think in every zone, and again, as the mayor sits as a class member of the planning board, I can only reflect what I feel the sentiment of the planning board is that they're looking at the upgrade aspect of it. They can't look at the economics. I can look at the economics.
Right.
You know, I can tell you that slaughterhouse is only paying $11,000 a year in taxes. And I can
It doesn't
tell
cost us anything either.
Pardon me?
Doesn't cost us anything either.
Doesn't cost you. She's tired.
Me too.
I wouldn't blame her either.
I'm going to be crying soon too.
It doesn't cost us anything. So, you know, at the same time, what you're saying is, hey, you know what? It's as good as open space, but it's not yielding anything. But I
Right.
mean, planning board doesn't look at the economics, and I always caution them about that anyway when we get into some of these discussions. They were looking at the upgrade of the property. They were looking at the best use for the property. They looked at it as you heard the word, transitional type of use. They finally reduced this down to this new 10A zoning, which they compared to the zoning across the street in Windermere. And Windermere is the same type of densities, give or take, let's concede to each other, give or take a foot. Give or take a foot.
A few, this is more. We understand.
And Windermere, the Windermere density, with the history that we've got there, seems to work out very well. I tell you, that was a strong influence on the planning board in looking at what they wanted here. The R40 zoning, single-family R40 homes, possibly could support 3 homes in there, maybe 4. And I think in their estimation, that zone went back to the late 1960s and hadn't been looked at. It was part of the study plan that they did and looked at. And they came up with, finally, listening to the arguments that the developer presented to try and put a higher density use on there.
Right.
Did they allow what he first came in with? Well, you know,
Yeah.
Look, the process works.
They did.
The
They did,
process
and it was a
works.
breath away from going through.
You know, the process worked. We stopped it. We said, no, it's too much, went back, okay? So here we are. This is the best explanation I can give you at this particular point on that.
Okay. Again, my point was, it wasn't up for sale that long. There could be other buyers out there that
Yeah.
could develop it in a way that is better suited for the town. Again, the homes, that's not the neighborhood that we're looking for. We're losing the fabric of what I think a lot of people are looking for. That's not the fabric. It's still high density. Yes, it's less. It's still high density. The fabric is not there. Did I use up my 5 minutes?
Well, that's okay.
I just wanted to
It's
comment
okay,
one more
but
time.
that's fine.
There was an email that went around. I signed it. I wrote it, more or less. The numbers, there seems to be some discrepancy. Those are true numbers that were on there. I think there was one that I was a little off on, was the B Meadow. Well, you can chime in on that one. But those are true numbers. So to say that my numbers were false and inflammatory, you took offense, I took offense.
I talked to the, I'm entitled to
Oh, and-
respond to you.
All right, one more thing. Mr. Giorgio, I'm sorry, that was the only email I had. If people emailed you, that was the way to get to get to the rest of the councilmen. I didn't want to give out personal email addresses. So,
I had conversations with the superintendent as early as 2 o'clock this afternoon to be updated. His kindergartens for the coming year 2015 indicate that his enrollment is going to go down on that kindergarten side to about 110 coming in.
I think there's a couple things here. Enrollment's up. It is up this year. Even with the 8th grade class moving out, which fortunately for you guys was a big class.
We have differences.
If it wasn't, you guys would have
We have
been.
differences of opinion.
I hope some other people stand up and back me up on this
This is your
one.
superintendent of schools.
Okay?
I can only go by.
I'm getting it from members also.
Michael, I can only go by the reports that I get. He's
But you're going to hear from other people in the audience.
He's graduating out in the 8th grade, 185 pupils. His kindergarten this year will start with, in 2015, with 110. It was 140. He is showing a 5-year decline. Now, granted, and I'm going to go back respectfully to what Joe had commented earlier, it's without the additional numbers that are before us now for consideration. That will impact schools.
Absolutely.
Now, I also had a very in-depth conversation with Scott on where we think changes in this population are coming from present day. And he and I both realize that economic conditions are, thank you, Lord, getting better. House values, or if you have Zillow on your data, on your smartphone, steal it up and you'll find out the value of your house, current market. But you'll find that markets now are increasing. Inventory is decreasing. Real estate people that we talk to are hungry for properties to sell. The resales are coming out of just that, resales, not new starts. And the school studies that we did no more than 3 or 4 years ago also indicated that the greatest brunt of the younger student population, in this particular case, your third grade, is coming from those resales. So if we stopped everything, put a lock on Hanover right now, we stopped everything, the resales and the change in the demographics for the children is still going to happen. It goes up, it goes down, you know?
I agree.
I had this conversation with George. George's been on the school board 13 years. 13 years. He's seen higher populations in the student population, and he's seen lower. And if we could put our finger on the button that makes a change, we'd be great. You know, we can only do our best.
I understand there's going to be fluctuations, but we don't need to encourage them either. We don't need to exasperate them by building the higher density. It's going to add to it. I've taken over my time. Thank you very much.
It's all right.
Hopefully some other people will chime in on this matter.
Well, you know, by us doing this, I hope we're answering a lot
Yeah,
of other
I hope we
questions.
are too, because these are a lot of the concerns. Again, we asked for single-family homes. We were looking for a neighborhood, not a condo cut-up. That's what these are, and these are the densities that we're talking about. Picture your own yard. Picture 3 houses, 5 houses, 6 houses on that yard. That's what we're getting. That's not a neighborhood. Okay? Thank you.
You know, okay. You're entitled to a round of applause. Fine. You know, I think what the Township Committee has to also consider, just as a statement here, is that this ordinance for zone change will allow to a maximum density on that particular piece of land. Operative word, to a maximum density. It doesn't mean that the suggested amount of footprints can happen or not. That's a planning board matter. That goes before the planning board in a separate application. Go ahead, Tom.
Planning board order 234 units, and they're going to cut it down. So I think your tendency might be on the other side, not the direction I'm looking to go. That's a fear.
Yeah.
Rather have it nailed down now.
Understood.
Rather than throwing it out there, because you know the developer wants as many as he can get.
Yep. I always said it. I know. I understand. Okay. Madam, your name and address.
Andy Mahalko, 7 Nye Avenue. That's our house on the board. the top right-hand
Are you
side of the
related- are you
board.
related to the gentleman that was next to you there?
That's my husband, sometimes. I had a couple points to make. One, requirements that were talked about before about posting this information and making the residents aware of what's going on at these meetings. It's all well and good to put it in the paper, a month ago and everything else. I know as late as Monday night, about 11 o'clock, this agenda was not posted on the website for tonight's meeting. I forgot to look afterwards and see when it actually did go up, but you have to realize that that's where we're told to go when we come to these meetings to get that information, that it's posted on the website. But Monday night, 3 days ago, it still wasn't posted that this was coming before the board tonight.
It was posted on Tuesday.
Okay, well,
And
maybe a little bit.
That's normally the day we do it because we have to wait to see exactly what we have for the agenda. So it's a work in progress and it takes time.
Okay, thank you. Another point, again, you keep sitting up there saying you have no control about what comes before the planning board. We know that's true, but 1 year ago, the 36 units for this property was approved by the planning board. It was introduced by this committee, and you can sit up there and say what you will, but I have no doubt that if 30-some-odd people didn't show up at that meeting this night, this board would have pushed that right through.
You're entitled to that opinion.
It is, and I say it because you guys seemed shocked when we showed up here in opposition to the plan. We were reprimanded by Mr. Bruno saying, why didn't you come up before? We had no idea anybody was against this, because we didn't know about it. That's why. So, that's what happened. And my husband and I put out the email that went around. We sent it. Yes, it's true that this property and this ordinance abuts our property. We have concerns about how it will be developed. But I take offense to the accusation that that email was sent only as an attempt to get people out here to this meeting tonight to defeat this particular ordinance. If you've heard tonight, I, like everybody here, have many concerns about the direction this council is taking with regards to development in this town, and we just want the residents to be informed. We wanted to get an email out telling people, hey, come to the meeting, this is what's going on. Like some people said, the talk around the mailboxes is everybody's upset. So we're trying to get people to come out to this meeting and hear for themselves. And believe me, you'll continue to see me and hear me at these meetings tonight after whatever vote is made tonight on this ordinance. And I also take offense to the accusation that my email contained many false statements. It's true that the Saddlebrook unit on Horse Hill Road put 20 students into the Mountview Road School. Again, you can say that enrollment is down because we had a very large outgoing 8th grade class. The kindergarten is not as big. Doesn't change the fact that you're not looking at the other grades and the class sizes. Mountview Road had to add a 4th, 3rd grade class. They had to lose their aftercare room. My friend was told her Girl Scout troop can no longer meet in the school building because there's not a place for her troop to meet. My kids go to B Meadow. I stood there on the first day of school and listened to Mr. Stark make the announcement that there were 20 students in B Meadow School, 10 of whom in 5th grade, bringing 5th grade, both 5th grade classes, up to 25 students in each class. And that's true. And the secretary at B Meadow, who's worked there longer than she will say, said there's never been this many new students coming in at the beginning of a school year for as long as she's worked there. They're having a new student breakfast for the first time ever this year because there's so many new students. And it came from the Board of Ed that Mountview Road and Salem Drive schools are 10 students away from capacity. So I don't know what was not true in my email. So I'm not going to take up any more time. I just wanted to make those points. And again, we're the ones that have to look at this property. We'd rather look at an open field than what you're planning to put there. Whether or not that many houses go in, I guess we'll see. Thank you.
Father Roman Milchuk, 60 North.
Father, 1 second, please. May I respond just so we keep? Well, I used the word in a personal email to a gentleman who had globally circulated an email that, in my opinion, some of the statements are incorrect and inflammatory and irresponsible. I stand by that. This is another letter. This is from the superintendent of schools. B Meadow can accommodate 400 students. Its current population is 333. The capacity I have for Salem Drive shows the differentials there too. The same thing is true of Memorial. Memorial can accommodate 600 students. Presently, we're at about 540. So, look, you don't zone on the basis of how many students go in. I think we've heard this earlier about how many students are in and out of schools. You don't zone on the basis of the economics of how much money you can make. And by the way, if you wanted to know what that number is, I quoted your present number on that property at $11,058, and the financial officer tells me that the proposed zoning that you have there, and I can talk economics, these gentlemen up here can't, would be $114,750. That's half a tax point, folks, if you want to look at it at that point. But let's ignore that, okay? And secondly, again, I just want to keep the record straight on the kids, but that's also not a good reason for the zoning either, or is it a good reason to zone against market conditions? There's not a developer that doesn't come into this planning board lately or into this, before this township committee, and these gentlemen corroborate that isn't looking for rentals. And it wasn't too many years ago, they were looking for warehouses, and the same thing was true when they wanted office buildings, and we held back, because now there's a tremendous glut of office buildings, you know. But we can't go on the basis of market trend. We have to go on the basis of what balances our community's needs, housing for employees that work here, industry that has certain requirements. You heard a comment earlier about Bayer Corporation. Bayer Corporation on their properties do want upscale rentals toward the rear of their property for peoples that they know are going to, one of their employees that they know are going to want to use it. Will it impact our schools? Look, I can stand here and say that kind of a use has almost a very limited amount of school children, maybe 35 units to one or something like that. I can quote facts all night. We don't want to hear that. I understand. Having said that, again, I apologize. I just want to keep the record straight on the student population. Again, I'm quoting from stats that that are received from the superintendent of schools. So, on that note, Father, you wanted to speak. I'm sorry.
Father Roman Milchuk, 60 North Jefferson Road, Whippany, New Jersey. I'm sort of concerned because despite everything that has been said, and we've been assured that it's going to be condo regulations, etc., I still don't know where those children are going to play. They're going to be deprived of having swings. They're going to be deprived of having any place. They're going to see this beautiful place across the, fence there, and I mean, we get them from Woodmere Court and everything coming and skating on our property. We've got cars coming constantly off in road. They're going to come on our property. We don't need that. Secondly, I don't see if there is a party or something going on over there where those people are going to park. Fortunately, people in Woodmere Court and the other place, they have on-street parking. Here, there is no place to do that. Where are they going to put their cars? Also, I mean, we have to be realistic. We have a huge debt. We have to pay it off. All we need is more neighbors, like the neighbor in back who constantly complains and now put up a house that he can complain even building more because you can hear the sounds. We don't need going into that with the new neighbors, that your noise is too much, cut down the thing. How are we going to pay? We have services going on in the church. We have processions around. We also wouldn't want people saying, you're interfering on our Sunday mornings and everything like that. Given the trend of our government, limiting religious expressions and everything like that, and trying to salvage the rights of the individual, we don't want down the line to be told, you can't have a procession, you can't ring your bells, you can't do this, you can't do that. Also, we kind of find it offensive that in all of this time, the developer, knowing that I have spoken many times in opposition, has never taken the time to come over and to ask about the concerns of the parish about this. It's always, we're put before the fact. I think diplomacy on his part would have been better if he came and tried to work with us just as we try to work with them, because we don't live across the street. We're right next to him.
But I'm still very concerned of what is going to happen on that little piece of land with all of those houses and possibly all of those children, and God willing, all of them have 3 or 4 children so that the population can live. Where are they going to be? I don't know. I think you should take that into consideration before you allow even that. I know I've been assured that possibly the house next to the rectory might be moved, but we'd like that to be taken into consideration. And also that cul-de-sac turnabout, if it were turned going the other way, so that those houses were flipped up there, so that, you know, you have less neighbors next to our cultural center. Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
Fareed Sheikh, 35 Windermere Court, Whippany. Hello, everyone. Good evening. So obviously I live on Windermere Court, so when I look at the map, and I talked about this one of the sessions before as well, so it concerns me, the safety on the road, safety of the kids walking on the road, and people crossing the road sometimes going to the church. So the more I listen, you know, in the last session I was there once too, at least for me, I find it difficult to understand the benefits. I want to understand the benefits, quite honestly, but I'm not understanding it. It's probably my fault, but I want to understand the benefits. I want to understand, do our roads get better with this setup? Do our children going to be safer when they cross the streets and the roads? Do our schools get better? I don't know the answer. I want to understand from you folks. Do they get better? Does the quality of life get better in Whippany, a town I love? I've been here for about 10 years. Does it get better? Does the safety get better? Does our police get stronger? Do our town services get better? Does our community get stronger? Do our churches become stronger and better? Does the future of our kids get better? I don't know the answer. I want you guys to help me there. And I don't want to understand the downsides of not doing this. I'm failing to understand it. I want to understand it. I want to make sure we do the right things for our community, for our churches, for our children. I'm not understanding it. I do want to understand the benefits, clearly. So we can all contribute to what's good for the community. I think the people are failing to understand the benefit. And I think it's important for this administration to help us understand it if you're failing to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thomas Gallagher, 20 Woodfield Drive, Whippany, the Whippany section of Hanover Township, Mr. Mahalko. We've been talking about this quite a bit on the school board with enrollment, projected enrollment, and the fact that enrollment was going to go down this year. The reason it was going to go down this year was because we had 189 graduating 8th graders, and we always compare it to how many kindergartens are coming in. Well, the actual was 129, and the projected was going to be 1,411, and the actual as of September 1st is 1,478. I talk quite a bit with Scott Pepper and our school board because we're concerned, and as you guys know, we're all local and we're all accessible, and people are concerned. We've all gotten a lot of phone calls and emails, and people have come to public board meetings. But the numbers I got from Scott, and we talked about as a board, and we're concerned, and we do have the 2% cap too, and every time we have to add a section, we have to hire a new teacher. In our district, it's $51,000 plus benefits. It usually comes out to about $70,000, and we're already slightly above that 2% cap. So Mount View Road School, the capacity is 340, and we're right now at 329. B Meadow is 332 right now, and we're currently at 420. So we can put, in theory, 88 more children in B Meadow. Salem Drive can hold 300. Right now there's 275, and that's 25 different. But we also don't know how many people are going to be at the Saddlebrook project, and we anticipate that they're going to have to be bussed over to Salem Drive, which we've done before when we've had large classes. Memorial Junior School, excuse me, has 540, and then it can have up to 600. That's 184 students. So, as a school board member, I understand that. As a school board member and as a father and as a Hanover Township resident, I spent quite a bit of time talking to many people in town about the schools in the last 5.5 years. And we're not exactly sure what's going to happen next. And I even asked Scott Pepper a couple different times, well, what are we going to do? We do have the 2% cap. And Scott's answer to me was, we're not sure right now. So with Mr. Mahalko, I understand a lot of your concerns, and we went back and forth on the numbers, and a lot of people have. And I just wanted to weigh in on the schools as a School Board of Education member.
Thank you, Tom. And we'll keep you honest because your numbers are absolutely correct, and those are the numbers I've been quoting from, right, tonight. So that's from Mr. Pepper. So, you know, again, we've got to depend on the reports and the studies and the work that we get and the research that the board has done over the time. I know I'm belaboring the point, and I know we're concerned with school children in this township. We all are, and it's a factor that comes up. Every planning board application that has housing in it, it comes down to the children, and we're not looking to expand our schools. On the other hand, and this is going to sound, you know, to many out here who want our town to, you know, Len Ferriello sat in this seat a long time ago. Maybe he should still be here. But in any event, I used to always tease Len because I said the best thing that Lenny wanted in this town for us to remain is dirt roads and teepees. And while I teased him with that, that was his philosophy for the township. Hanover isn't going to remain that way. Hanover is a moving, dynamic town. It's going to remain, it's changing to a pharma town. It's going to have different needs. It's going to have housing needs, etc. COA is a whole other, Council of Affordable Housing, for those out there that don't understand the initials of COA. Council of Affordable Housing, probably the worst thing that the state of New Jersey ever did to suburban towns like ours. I hold it right up there highly with the Highlands Act. The governor was here, he'd share my feelings on that. That having been said, we fight over this all the time. And I almost think that even with the development that we're doing now with Bayer Corporation, with all of these things that you say don't bring housing with them, you know, the Township Committee just tonight spent about a half an hour talking to our planner about the fact that even industry, even offices, even retail uses and such that have square footage and provide additional jobs within the township have a damn COA component. And we're going to fight on that basis. We're going to fight against that. We're going to fight to prevent that from happening. But that's what we're dealing with here. And that's what we dealt with some 25 years ago. I sat on this board, and that's why the 5 developments you have in this town that Mr. Mahalko quoted so accurately on the densities, Oak Ridge, Eden Lane, Sunrise, Hanover Hills, Sterling Mist, all those developments have higher density to accommodate what they called at the time 22% set aside for low and moderate housing, as the state of New Jersey held a gun to our head and said you had to do. We did it as a mixed venue. We put it in with market housing. We have not had any issues. We have not had any public safety issues. We have not had any domestic issues with it, etc. That's what brought us to where we are. Again, I'm going to get off my podium. The floor is still open. Please, anyone else would like to address the Township Committee? Bob Nardone, how are you?
Hi, Bob Nardone, 4 Schindler Court, the Whippany section of Hanover. I'm also a member of the Planning Board. I just thought it might be a good idea, just a couple minutes, instead of having the Planning Board vilified, maybe we just give you a perspective as to how we get here, okay? So, the risk of being booed. Keep it short. I only have a couple minutes. So Ron, the mayor actually made a couple of points I think that are salient to this, but I think I want to emphasize this. About a year ago, the planning board undertook a project to take a look at the way we are looking at our master plan and our land use. That is our job. The land use is an asset for the community for a number of reasons. And one of the things that was hitting us right between the eyes was what I would call a cross in our town, that's the core of our town, that was in a serious need of revitalization. A lot of boarded up, empty buildings, dilapidated buildings, some of it a sign of the times with hard economics that hit us in 2008, but also a lot of it's a function of obsolete zoning, because a lot of that zoning was getting in the way of what was really practical on a go-forward basis. So Couple of facts. You just can't keep building office spaces. In Morris County alone, there's a 45% vacancy rate. That's not just temporary, that's a trend. You don't have room for industrial zones. Anybody that drove down Hanover Road 4 or 5 years ago, it was a perfect sign of suburban blight. And it's an effort to revitalize that. Well, Route 10 and Jefferson Road are consistent in many ways with that. And anybody that's lived in town, I've been in town for 36 years, I've raised my family here, knows that it's a serious problem, and it affects all of us because it devalues the quality of the town. It devaluates all our property values. And while that's not an important, ratables aren't the main reason for zoning, land use brings ratables. So we get ideas from a variety of sources for zoning. It comes from developers, it comes from property owners, it comes from even the planning board and township officials. We have a group like the Economic Development Group in town that's made several recommendations. This site is consistent with the things I just said tonight. It is in the middle of Jefferson Road. It's a zone that's totally obsolete, R40. R40 zones were the things that created COA. That restricted zoning goes back well into the 40s and 50s, and it restricts the diversity of housing that you need. This was a blighted site. This was an opportunity to take a look at our zoning and to see if it met some of our criteria for improving Jefferson Road and to create a diversity of housing. The housing, the pictures that you see, the development that you see actually came out of the planning board and planning officials' ideas for how to use these sites. And there's many other communities that have used these sites with a lot of success because not everybody wants a 1 acre lot with a 3,000 square foot home or a 4,000 square foot home, which, by the way, sometimes gets into the impacts communities and neighborhood feels. This seemed like it was a good alternative. It's zoning. I know everybody's saying it's dense zoning, but it's zoning that's consistent with R10 and R15 zoning, which we have an abundance of in our town, and that also creates diversity in housing. So I just wanted to say it's consistent with our plans to try to revitalize the town, and it's consistent with zoning that's in many other places in our town, even across the street in Windermere, and we pushed. After the first failure, we pushed to get this to be consistent as much as we could with Windermere, R10 zoning, and R15 zoning. So that's all I had to say. I wanted to add tonight. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm back. Fareed Sheikh, 35 Windermere Court, Whippany. I'm really hoping somebody could explain me the benefits. I'm not very technical. I want to understand the benefits. I want to get convinced. I want to believe. I want somebody to explain me. I live in Windermere. The only thing I see clearly is that the road is going to get busy. I walk with my son to the library. Sometimes we go to the church. It's going to get complicated. So I am not understanding the benefit. I'm sure there is stuff.
Wouldn't they be the like benefits?
Sorry?
You live in Windermere.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be the like benefits that you just mentioned? You like walking to the library?
Yeah, but I'm thinking the road is going to get, traffic is going to be there. It's going to be busy. It's going to get complicated to, walk across the street. So I worry about that too. The traffic is really bad in the evenings as well. So I want to understand. I'm hoping that one of you guys would stand up and talk about the benefits in English, simple English, say, this is going to improve, this is going to improve. You live in 35 Windermere, your quality of life is X, it's going to be 2X or X plus, this is what you'll get. And this, you guys live on the other street, it's going to get better for you. These guys, your two kids go to school, this is going to get better for you. I want to understand that, if somebody could explain. Thank you.
If I could respond just briefly, I don't think there's any question that development activity generally has negative impacts. It's pretty much a given. All development, including the single-family development that is predominant in most suburban communities, has negative benefits. There's environmental impacts, the clearing of trees, the disturbance of soil, and other environmental impacts in just the use of the property. There's traffic that single-family homes generate. There are school kids that single-family homes generate, the demand for services that they generate. What positives do all the single-family homes in the township have? Well, one of the positives is that they provide a place for people to live. They contribute to a community's character. You might argue one way or the other whether that's a benefit or not, but because all development has negative impacts, you can't really look at zoning from the standpoint of anything being better. Any development on that property would generate more traffic. But I would argue that the amount of traffic this is going to generate is going to be fairly minor. If you had a commercial development there, it would be far worse. But I would suggest that given the volume of traffic on Jefferson Road, it's tiny, tiny proportion of what's contributed to by what I would call more the regional traffic patterns, where people coming down Parsippany Road, coming down to Route 10, or going up to Route 287 is doing far more to the traffic conditions on Jefferson Road than this development is going to do. But again, any development is going to generate traffic, so you can't really look at it as in the sense of a quantitative, we want there to be no negatives. There's going to be negatives of any development. So I think the planning board's thinking, as far as positives were, it would get rid of what's there, which they consider a blighted condition. The size and shape of the property is such that it doesn't lend itself well to the current zoning, because it's not, the mayor mentioned 3 or 4, you couldn't do more than 2 lots on the property unless you put in a street. Once you put in a street, that takes up land. There's no way you could even get 3 without variances on the property. And the planning board doubts very much that 2 lots would be sufficient economically to justify the cost of the land, demolition, and construction. The board felt that this type of housing is one, on a smaller lot, was one that is in greater demand. And I think Mr. Nardone was speaking to, when he spoke of zoning obsolescence, I think he's speaking to changing market conditions where people, not everybody, but some people and more people are seeking to live in a home with lower maintenance needs. And that speaks to this zoning does not create individual lots that each homeowner has to maintain, but is maintained by an association. So there's lower maintenance. So it meets a market niche, a housing type that many people prefer. And the board looked at the density and the pattern of development along Windermere, on Windermere Court, and thought this is similar to that. There are some differences because of the size and shape of the property and putting in a road. Part of the rear yard problem that was spoken to by Mr. Mahalko is due in part because of the dimensions of the property. And you need to have a building set back sufficiently from the road so you can park a car in the driveway without it being half in and half out of the garage. Once you put a house on the property, that leaves only so much for the rear yard. That being said, the zone was designed to allow some flexibility, not only so you didn't have a straight row of homes, all with the same front yard, but that where the rear yard would be reduced, it would be at the board's discretion to place it adjacent to wetland areas and not necessarily adjacent to somebody else's home. So the board, in its review of this, if and when it were to get to the board, would be looking at that sort of thing. So I just wanted to say, as far as benefits, just like all the single-family homes in town, if you want to look at it from a fiscal benefit, it's not going to be there. If you want to look at it from an environmental benefit, it's not going to be there. If you want to look at it from a traffic benefit, it's not going to be there. It's going to be worse afterwards than it was before. The benefits are, as I said before, getting rid of what's there, providing a housing type that is in demand, lower maintenance, lower size unit, and is comparable or compatible with what's on Windermere Court across the street. That was, I think, the main focus of the board's thinking as to what the benefits were. But all development is going to have negatives.
Thank you, Blaine. Appreciate it. The floor is still open.
Hi, Mary Connor of Jock Terrace, Whippany. I'm very confused. You just said, you made a statement that you didn't want the houses to be in a row. They look like they're in a row to me. And I live in a development which our lots are not oversized. They're like a normal sized lot. We do have streets that connect because that's what gives you the feeling of having a development. And then it troubles me that you did say that an association would be taking care of the property. Well, then that does make me feel that it is basically like a condo type of a development, but the houses are individual, but you can almost shake each other's hands. So I just don't understand, why does it have to be rezoned? Why can't it be like the neighborhood that I live in, like a lot of neighborhoods in the area, in the township, where it's a neighborhood? Because it's not a row of homes that almost kind of all are going to look very similar, and that's it. There's one street that goes down the street. It's not where little kids can take a bike and ride their bike around in a neighborhood. So yes, if you have to put a street in to connect different areas, if you reconfigure the lots and you lose a home here and there, to me, it's just economics for the person that owns the property. It's not for what that neighborhood is going to look like. And I kind of feel that that's what the people here are talking about, that they don't want to lose that feeling, that little feeling of a neighborhood, which that definitely is not. That to me does look like, you're living in, like where my mom grew up, where the houses are right next to each other. So I would feel that you should maybe, look at the zoning and try to leave the zoning as it was. In my neighborhood right now, there's a woman that wants to put an addition on her home, and she has to go for a variance. Well, what kind of variances are there? I mean, they're on little lots, so, thank you.
Green picture, I think, I'm Nancy Bergamasco, Reynolds Avenue, Whippany. That's 12 houses in this
Are
townhouse
you going to
complex?
give your name and address for a
Sorry.
second, or are you just going to speak?
Sorry. Nancy Bergamasco, 85 Reynolds Avenue, Whippany.
Thank you.
That's 16 houses times 2 adults. If that's all that's driving, that's 32 cars. That picture looks like 4 houses times 2 adults. That's 8 cars. So that's already double, triple, quadruple. So I don't understand how you can tell me that's less traffic, or it's not going to be
I
a
never said it would
factor.
be less.
You said it wouldn't be a big factor in traffic because there's not that many more cars, but there are. Every road is crowded. Every road is congested. No matter where you want to go in rush hour, you have to sit and wait. So yeah, houses, you're going to start with 2 adult drivers. Maybe teenagers would come to drive later. If now you add on 2 teenagers to every one of those houses, you have 64 cars coming in and out. I see 8 adults. I see 8 children driving later on. I see 16 drivers. So still in the end, I understand the townhouse part where people want to live in a area where they maybe don't want to have to take care of their lawn in an association, but you cannot tell me that 64 cars is not going to make more traffic on a road that's already trafficy when you can't drive down Route 10 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the road municipal area at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You cannot drive here. You have to take the outskirts and go around everywhere because you cannot go on Route 10 starting at 3 o'clock. 16 cars maybe in 10 years, or 64 cars. Maybe more, depending on how many kids they have. So never mind what the impact on the school is, you are talking more traffic. I don't understand how you
There
say
will be more traffic.
there's no traffic.
My point was that any development will have more
I
traffic.
know, but that's less traffic.
I understand that, but.
That's
in-
just
in-
less
in-
traffic, so you
in
can't
the-
say there's not going to be a traffic situation.
In the grand scheme of what traffic there is on Jefferson Road, the board did not consider the amount of traffic generated by this
Well, that needs to be
development
considered if we're
be-
going to consider our quality of life in
it's a
Whippany and the
minis-
traffic that's already there.
it's
That's
a-
just my comment,
It's a
thank you.
minuscule percentage.
Let me, I didn't have an opportunity to answer Mary on something, but now you brought up an area of traffic, then I think we got to understand something as a community, that, Hanover seems to be taking the responsibility for all the traffic buildup on Jefferson Road, all the traffic buildup on Route 10, all the traffic buildup on Whippany Road. We had AT&T on Whippany Road for the longest time, 1 million square feet of office space. Presently, it's 650. Bayer's not even in there yet, and the traffic's there. Where is the traffic coming from, right? The same thing is true on Jefferson Road. Crossings, which was the Bear Stearns property, Chase Manhattan Bank on the far end, they're gone, they're out of there. They used to add to the traffic. Where's all this new traffic coming from? The county went into a traffic study plan. I was on that board for a while. It was 3 years in the progress. We are getting such transitional traffic in Hanover Township that we're getting a responsibility for. And God bless us all, including myself. I mean, I can wait at this traffic light here on Jefferson Road some nights at 6 o'clock and wait 5, 6, 7 lights before I can get to your town hall. But the point of that is, that's not all our traffic. That's coming across, that's detours cutting across Whippany Road, coming up this way because they don't want to get on 287 backups over there. We're inheriting a lot of this stuff. We're complaining to the township. They finished the regional study. They know where all the hot spots are. So hopefully someday, maybe in my lifetime, I hope I ever see it, they'll start on the process of putting some money forward to fix it in a greater scheme. But having said that, you know, I just don't want us to feel that we have to take all the blame for the traffic that's happening in this town, when in fact, the net square footage of the office buildings and the businesses in this town has gone down. But Gene, go ahead.
Gene Pinadella, 38 Sunset Drive, Whippany. I also am a member of the planning board. I guess I'm the elder statesman on the planning board. When I started, I had all brown hair. Now it's all gray. With regard to this whole process and the ordinance, what you have to remember, and many of you probably don't even know it, but way back when, this property was of interest to many developers. Not only this property, but the property that the church is on, when it was vacant. And all of the developers that came in wanted to put condominiums or apartments. And this township, this committee, the planning board, and those that came before all of us have never, ever considered the high densities that they wanted at the time. We fought like hell to keep it out of there. When COA came along, this was one of the properties, along with the property that the church was on, that was under consideration to become part of the COA properties. But because of its location, we all agreed that that was not the right spot to put in COA apartments. And the only developers we had, when I tell you, they were talking about developments with 25 and 30 to the acre, which means you would have had a tremendous number of units in this property. At the end of Nye Avenue, where there are now single-family homes, there were concept plans to put in condos than we can even remember. We used to get them maybe once a month. The whole point to this is, you've listened to Blaze talk, you've listened to Mr. Nardone talk. We as a planning board have looked at a lot of things, and we've given a lot of consideration to many ideas for not only this property, but other properties in town. Thanks to our Director of Planning, Mr. Faramasca, we recently had a study done, because he also was concerned with the number of multifamily houses that were going up in this town, with the impact that it would have on schools and on children and everything else. And the meeting that you heard Michael and Joe Mahalko talk about, the planning board the other night, was when we went over a draft of the results of that study. And we did get information, more so than we've ever had before with regard to a lot of that. And the reason we got that information, and the reason we've even considered it, is because he was concerned with the direction the town was going. We have not sold out to developers, ever, in this town. Ever. I take a great deal of pride in the fact that I've been a part of this planning board for over 30 years. And to be quite honest with you, we have negotiated with lots of developers. And we have gained from every negotiation we've ever been in. Secondly, you've heard Blaze talk about this property and said, the way it's zoned now, it would never get developed. Every property owner in this town has the right to develop property. They have a right to develop it the way we as a township believe will be the most beneficial way for the town. Not necessarily all the benefits of, is it going to do this, is it going to do that? But we know it's going to get developed. It could have been developed as office years ago, but we rejected that. We look at it as a transition from the commercial zone and, believe it or not, the church zone. I know a lot of people here don't believe in transition, all right? But that's exactly what this is. because you're never going to get single-family homes on this piece of property. And something is going to get developed on it. Now, I don't know what else can be said, but when you look at the history of what's gone on in this property, if you go back and look at the fact that the town at one time tried to buy the property that the church was on to keep it as open space, and in effect, because it came to a better use, and we congratulate Father and the church for being able to open up the new church. But there was a time when we wanted that for open space because we wanted to create a transition zone. We even tried to buy this property at one time and couldn't get the property owner to want to talk about a reasonable price to be able to purchase it. So when you look at all of that, what we have here is we have a piece of property that we've continued to negotiate with the developers to come up with the best plan that we believe is a benefit to the town overall over the other concepts that have been brought before us as a town that would have been more detrimental than anything you're looking at here. Now, does that mean this is a bad plan? I don't believe so. I happen to believe this is a good plan. There's more we have to do with the developer when he comes in with his plan after the ordinance gets developed, all right? But the real answer is, this planning board has put a lot of time into many of the open areas of this town. We've rejected a lot of things that you don't hear about. You come out to the township committee meetings, nobody comes out to the planning board meetings. Maybe it's time that you start coming out to the planning board meetings, and we can hear you there also. We hear very few people. That doesn't mean we don't talk to a lot of people, because we all do. But the real answer is, this is the best concept you're going to find for this property that has a reasonable chance of being properly developed. Thank you.
Good evening, Ann Cuss. Am I on?
Pull that down to it. There you go.
Good evening, Ann Kusanaki from 39 Malapartis Road. The question number one is, this property was used, I believe, as a slaughterhouse. Is the land clean for housing to be put on there? Because when it was in existence, I believe the laws were not as stringent as to the cleanliness of the property.
You're being kind, but go ahead.
Well, I'm just concerned about perhaps the two houses on the one side in the front of Jefferson Road. Perhaps that land is probably cleaner, while the place that was used where the animals were taken, perhaps that land is not that clean, and the houses that are going to be put up there, perhaps those people might suffer with unclean water, whatever. That is my concern. Second, the houses that are going up, are they going to be low middle class? Are they going to be on the quality of the Windmere Estates, or what is the price range that the builders?
The price point that we're being told on these homes is 700,000 plus.
Well, that's a nice size.
These are not going to be in the category.
It sounds like a lovely home.
These are not my. These are not my. 700,000 plus is not, in my opinion, affordable. You know, but that's my opinion.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be elegant, but the concern also is that with those homes, do you want to squeeze them so that I have to look into my neighbor's window in the kitchen when she's making breakfast? I don't know, because I look in Parsippany when I'm going the back way towards 46 by the nursing home there. Those were $350,000 homes, and I look, a kitchen is here. It's like the New York apartments. You're looking into your neighbor's backyard. That is one concern. And also, I just want to bring to attention, I know I'm taking up people's time, the youth is not being occupied with their spare time where they could go. And I look at that post office that is standing on Jefferson Road, that is such a beautiful piece of property, and if somebody could use it, perhaps these kids wouldn't have to go on bicycles.
The post office on Jefferson Road?
The postal facility on South Road where it's closed
That's
now.
being used by a corporation known as UniFirst.
Oh, it is?
UniFirst is, that shows you how quietly they fit into the
Okay,
community.
well, that's good.
They have over 100 employees, and they do uniform laundering for commercial uniforms,
Okay.
et cetera, and they do delivery service of those uniforms. That's occupied. But I'm
Okay,
sorry.
well, I thought
But
perhaps.
your point's well taken.
I thought perhaps the youth might have a place to go to relieve some of their frustrations from,
I think
in
they
the
found
school
the
from
quick
8
check
to
on
3.
Whippany Road. I think that's what.
Thank you, and I'm sorry to take up your time.
Just to answer,
Thank you, dear.
answer your question on the cleanup issue, the state has regulations that won't allow residential use unless it's clean. So before it's ever approved, the developer would have to hire an expert to document that they're complying with the state law.
Yeah, Mr. Brancho, would you qualify in terms of cleanup at sites, in terms of the benefit to this township of having a residential cleanup as opposed to a commercial?
Yeah,
or
there's two levels of cleanup. There's cleanup to commercial standards, and then there's cleanup to residential standards. Cleanup to residential standards involves higher costs and higher levels of remediation of soil or groundwater, whatever it is, so that there's no health concerns for people living there, because they're there longer than someone who's working at a job. So obviously, using a property for residential use, if it is contaminated, results in a higher degree of cleanup than it would be otherwise.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Diana Plaza, Briarwood Court, Whippany section of Hanover Township. I'm here to mention a couple of things that came up during this discussion. A, the traffic that I have to travel on every single day on North Jefferson Road is horrendous. Adding 32 plus more cars is going to make it that much worse, and I think we all know that as soon as there's any issues on Route 10, Jefferson Road becomes the artery for accessing 287, 80, et cetera. So that traffic is ridiculous, and to wait 5 or 6 lights to be able to make a turn is outrageous. I also want to address the comment that was made that people don't attend the planning board, because I have been to multiple planning board meetings, and during those sessions, we are clearly told that those are planning board session meetings. They're not public, open to the public for discussion, so we can sit and listen, but we have to keep our mouths shut, essentially. So we did go to those meetings, and we were told you have to keep your mouth shut. So I want to address that as well. Thirdly, as far as antiquated R40 zones, I just want to remind the people in this room that one of the newest developments that have gone up and have sold like hotcakes in our community are the Nye Avenue extensions, which is an R40 zone. And if we all recall, those sold for at least 1.2, 1.3 million. One's on the market right now for $1.67 million. So there is still a desire for people to have those. Those are not antiquated developments. That builder, the same exact builder, made a lot of money the last time he sold all of those, and he can continue to profit from keeping this at the R40 zone, and still he can profit keeping it as it is and putting up less dense homes. That's it.
Let me just correct one comment for the record, because I don't want it left that the planning board does not, during its public sessions, which is completely complies with transparency and 231 of the Sunshine Law, every session of the planning board that's a public session, not the second Tuesday, and by the way, thank you, you do attend those meetings. Concept sessions don't open to the public for comment, although the chairman has from time to time done that. But every other public session, which is the 3rd and 4th Tuesdays of every month, where you're out in this room and they are out with the developers and peoples from our community that want to do things, there is a portion of that meeting for public comment after every single application. That's the law. So the statement is not entirely true. Thank you.
The ones that I attended, that was
To my knowledge, no one ever tried to stop you from having your comments heard, to my knowledge.
Just terms of clarification, the planning board work sessions typically occur in a conference room behind this wall on the second Tuesday of the month, beginning at 7 o'clock, if anybody wants to attend it. On the third and fourth Tuesday of the month, planning board has public sessions that are in this room. During the commentary of the public session, there's an opportunity, if you're a member of the public, to ask questions, make statements. There are times to do that. So I just wanted to clarify how that works.
Sir.
Good evening. I guess it's getting late. I'll try to make it brief. Joe Shatinsky, 40 Windmere Court, Whippany. Mayor, you made a comment about we don't rezone for consideration of number of children in schools and things like that, but we also should not be rezoning based on what a particular developer wants. The zones were put in for a reason. When that neighborhood was created, I'm sure the forefathers of the planning board and the township committee, I'm sure they took that into consideration and had North Jefferson one lane each way, no continuous sidewalks. They still don't exist today. I'm sure somebody had a conversation, said, oh, this will never be high density, we don't need sidewalks, things like that. So the zone was put in for a reason. So if we talk about changing a zone, it should be for a good reason. Now, the comments we heard about there's no market for R40, I absolutely reject. We heard about the extension on I Avenue. Those houses aren't that old. They sold. There's a new house on Briarwood, which is basically would fit into an R40 well. That house is sold. There's been a number of people that we're actually aware of that tried to buy that house, but it's under contract. The houses on Adele, they've been moving very quickly. So I absolutely reject that there's no market for R40. There is a market for R40. The other thing I want to comment about is from the planning board. So, you know, before we got involved with this particular case, I had a lot of respect for the planning board. You know, the things that were done, the township committee, everything not getting involved, everything that seemed to be going well. The town was well managed. As you say, the taxes have been low. This particular experience on this particular case has been really disappointing. From the beginning, this was done so non-transparently. The one gentleman, I don't know if he's still here, talked about Shadowbrook. He lives in the neighborhood, didn't know anything about it. We live in that neighborhood. We didn't know anything about it. That development plan went through planning board, which some of the township committee, you guys sit on that planning board. You voted and approved the 36 units. It flew through that, went through the township committee for final approval. The notifications of the residents 200 feet, that never apparently happened. So because of that technicality of the law, it had to be rescheduled. So then the residents started finding out. But the fact that that thing was done so non-transparently was a real big concern. And that non-transparency continued because when we went to the township committee, and we thank you for rejecting it, so you did the right thing there, you didn't approve that. But I remember Mr. Bruno in particular, you told us, go to the planning board. Don't wait to the end, which again, we didn't know about it, so we didn't wait to the end. It's just the first time we found out about it. Took your advice, went to the planning board, had a lot of residents. It was discussed. The residents wanted to comment on it, and we were told we could not address it. And if you remember, Father Murchuk got up and almost was like I'll call it a little riot. He said, I want to speak. I remember that day. We were not allowed to speak after we were told by Mr. Bruno to go to that meeting, and you're on the planning board, and nobody stood up at that planning board meeting and said, no, 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 we told those residents to come here and speak. So I'm sorry, with all due respect, we were told we could not speak. And it was only because Father Roman jumped up and said, I want my voice heard. Then the planning board opened up. So we got to be honest with each other how this process has gone. I specifically remember, residents have been here, feel free to verify that. Throughout the whole process.
That was a conference session, sir. If you have to forgive me when I interrupt, because for the record, I just want to keep us on a even course, okay? In a conference session, there is no open rebuttal or statement. You're allowed to listen.
But we were advised by Mr. Bruno.
That conference session was held out here. I was here.
Right. But Mr. Bruno advised us to go to that meeting and voice it.
I can't speak for Mr. Bruno. I'm telling you.
But he's on the planning board, and you were here when he said that.
I was here, sir.
You were here in the township committee.
Let me just clarify. It was the meeting of 3/12. The 3/12 meeting was the second Tuesday of the month. That meeting was conducted in the conference room behind this wall. So the protocol for that meeting in work session is that members of the public are invited. They're always invited to meetings, but they do not speak. normally in terms of asking questions. However, at that meeting, correctly, Father Roman spoke at that meeting
Because he
as
jumped
a
up.
result of the chairman allowing it to happen, and he spoke about detention basins. He spoke about having a fence around the property, which subsequently was agreed upon. He also spoke about the height of the building versus the church. He also said, he spoke about the heritage, and he was proud to be a member of this community. So I keep copious notes.
Right. So I agree, but there was a piece before that at that meeting where we had asked to speak and we were told you cannot speak even though that was discussed. And that was requested by multiple residents, and it was only when Father Roman got up and basically took over the podium, that's when the planning board allowed that. A lot of us were there, so we remember that. If anybody else wants to confirm that, we remember that very well. But again, the whole process has been really disappointing. The other thing I'll mention is hearing the conversation by the planning board. There was a point where there was a vote taken, does the planning board just consider multifamily or single family? And because the builder wanted multifamily, the planning board, I don't know what the percentage, like 80% said absolutely only multifamily, will not consider single family. I think Mr. Formasco, you were one that objected. I think Mr. Steiger was the second, and that was it. I think Mayor, you abstained. So right there, the planning board was acting on the interests of the builder and not the residents. So my comment is, we elect you, you appoint the planning board. You've done some good work, the planning board, with Bayer and some other things, but this particular development was not handled well. There's a market for R40. That's what the zoning is. That's what it should be. We don't need the high density. There's safety issues, no continuous sidewalks, the traffic, et cetera. The effect on the schools, you keep talking about the aggregate numbers, about, the numbers are up, down, but it's the effect on the individual classes. The Daily Record had an article a couple days ago or a week ago where they talked about the chaos caused at Mount View because of the unplanned students coming in from Shadowbrook. It had an effect. You talk to the parents at Mount View, they are furious. And, somebody mentioned about the conversation.
I read the article, sir.
I'm sorry?
I read the article.
Yeah, but so obviously it had a negative impact. So you can talk about gross numbers, but it's affecting the schools. And again, this is one development plus another development plus another. So again, just in summation.
Thank you for your 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. So just in summation, please look out for the residents. That's what we can ask for. Thank you.
Joe, do you want to sum up? Please. You want to sum up?
Thank you. Who controls the thermostat? It's getting warm.
I know. You got to be in this suit.
Joseph Mahalco, 12 Anna Terrace, Whippany section of Hanover Township. Just a couple of brief comments, although I've never been brief. Number one, I would just like to clarify one comment that my friend Blaze made. He said that it was not economically feasible for the builder to stay within the R40 zone financially. Not our problem. His. But this is going to be like a good news, bad news. Having said that, I think conceptually, the man's almost there with a good product. In addressing some of the concerns that I've heard tonight, I think the elimination of about 4 of those units would satisfy Father Roman, especially if of 2 of those units, or at least 1, were made a play park or a gathering center, if you would, and put it right behind the church. So he has no house there. The other 2 units, make it a public parking area for guests and abundance of vehicles of residents. I think that someone had mentioned about services, and what has been lost in translation here. This is a condo development, a proposed condo development. As such, an association will run this place. The lawns and roads and sanitation will be absorbed by the condo association. No cost to the town. So expense-wise, I can't address the student issue. Now, and that's one that's, as Mr. Capola mentioned to me the other day, the number goes up, the number goes down. It goes left, it goes right. You toss a coin, see what happens. But I think that with some modification, I don't know that this would not be a bad proposition. Keeping in mind the factors that I said, worrying about how much the builder makes is not the township's problem. Worrying about the quality of life is our problem.
What he paid for the property, you're absolutely right, Joe, is if he overpaid, too bad. You know, he's a wise enough developer, as we all know, to make his own deals, but that's not a concern for the planning board at all. You know, Blaze's remark indicated that, you know, the economics of it didn't work out for housing. We have no way of knowing what his base cost, so I'm not even going to go there. Okay. You did mention something, and Mary mentioned something earlier that I want to go back to. And by the way, thank you for those remarks. I think there are some aspects of what you said and the characteristics of this layout that the planning board, should we move forward, can address. And I'm sure they heard them. I want to talk about one of the conditions in this particular zone, this A10, and that is the condominium aspect, meaning that Massachusetts does this a lot. Maybe you've heard me talk to this. And this, although this was not my proposal, I certainly didn't disagree with the way it works. The land is condominium. Land under your place is condominium. You own your own home. It was the way I had my summer home there. So you can do what you wish in that regard, but outside your home, outside those 4 walls, you're not going to put a swimming pool in. You're not going to put a play set in. You're not going to put a patio up. You're not going to do anything that the condo association does not govern. And that was one of the things I think the planning board took into consideration at the time, as well as we did, because a lot of the comments we did hear from the public were that, well, we're going to have kids running around the backyards. We're going to have, you know, all kinds of, you know, equipment, different fences, all kinds of other architectural changes to it. Well, that couldn't happen under these conditions. It's totally controlled by the association, which is very unique in that this type of home, which again, I'll mirror image it to a home similar in square footage in Windermere. Windermere peoples own their home, own their property. You know, and they're going to plant their flowers and they're going to put their decks on. If they need variances, I hope they don't, and do what they need to do. So I just wanted to punctuate that for a little bit. It's a little extra control here. I think you make some relevant points. I speak for myself, by the way. I'm not speaking for these other gentlemen. They're going to have their own comments. I think you make some relevant points to the amount of units that are on there. But I also remind you that the ordinance that's going to be voted on uses the operative word to a maximum of, which means the planning board can act on something like this within the limits of that ordinance and still control it at a planning stage if it comes in when it comes in for site plan. Additional parking, relevant point. We talked about the street widths, we talked about parking on the streets. We compared this to some of our other upscale units, and Vieira, I think it is on Horse Hill Road. That's 42 units in there, 42. You wouldn't know they're in there, and I think the latest selling price, help me, Silvio, on that, on Vieira, in the top of the sixes?
Yes, around there.
Top of the sixes, by the way, that's before you choose your kitchen appliances that he doesn't supply. And garages, 2 cars per unit in that community, and we have not realized an issue, a traffic issue coming off of that. That's Vieira, okay? And I can only hope that if we go forward that this type of project, this type of product mirror images that. That's quality. Vieira, I can safely say, brought no children, but then again, Ron, you're going to say that because it's an adult, it's an age-restricted community, so that's the way that works. Having said that, I'm going to stop right here. Is there any members of the public that, additionally, that want to comment? I want to give everybody an opportunity before I cut off the dialogue, and then I want to hear from our Township Committee.
Andy Mahalko, 7 Nye Avenue. I just wanted to address the COA issue, not specifically for this property, but going forward. I don't have a complete understanding of it. I do know that Governor Christie tried to abolish it a couple of months ago and was overturned by the Supreme Court.
Boy, I'm backing him.
So I don't know what's going to happen with that. It seems everybody's unhappy with it, and they are trying to look for other alternatives, so hopefully it won't be something that we need to consider in the future. But from the way I understand it, if you're taking a property, putting 15 homes on a property that previously allowed 4, you're only increasing your COA requirements going forward. And not just for this property, but for the paperboard property. I forget the number, 1,100 proposed units on that property. Again, that's going to increase our COA requirements in town.
Not in my lifespan, but go ahead.
Okay, well, again, proposed, I believe that was the number.
Speaking for myself, again, I don't want to impugn this committee, but that was a comment from me. Go ahead.
I just think we need to stop. Again, maybe I don't have an understanding of it, but it seems the more we build in town, the more COA we're going to have to put up. So maybe we just stop the building a little bit. And again, I agree with everybody that stood up and said R40 I don't believe is an obsolete zone. You know, we live on Nye, Maple Shade. It's a beautiful neighborhood up there, R40. All the houses are occupied. Somebody said that there's, I know there's R10A that we're trying to change the zone to. Windermere, as I understand, is R10. And somebody from the planning board said there is an abundance of R10 zoning in town. Can you tell me where the other R10 zones in town are?
The preponderance, our experience, not experience, in fact, is the older sections of the Cedar Knolls area. Many of those zones were done as vacation spots years ago. You and I might know from that, or certainly Joe and I might know. And those are smaller lots. And we've still done some additional R10 zoning current day, but that's the preponderance. Now, the B Meadow areas are 2,500 square feet. Many of them are 15,000 square feet. And certain areas of Country Woods and Heritage are 40s. I'm just going from my own memory of the mapping. But in any event, to answer your question, most of the R10s are...
Okay, so the R10s are from many years ago, but yet you're saying the R40 is an antiquated zone.
Your current R10s are Windermere too,
Right, and, there's been a lot of complaints about Windermere. Everybody says it's, it's too dense. So, anyway, there are other options than R10A. I would be much happier with an R25, even an R15 on this particular property. So again, just going forward, I think we need to just tone down the building in town. And also to address the planning board that says this is the best, we went through many processes and the planning board is telling us this is the best. I know you guys work hard on the planning board. It's a difficult job. I wouldn't want it But that this is the best, you know, you defeated a lot of other things that came before this, and this is, came from a lot of meetings and going over what was best for this property. But I just want to remind you again that the planning board approved 36 condo units for this property also. So maybe saying now this is the best, I don't, I think it's zoned R40. I feel we should keep it R40. I ask you to vote no on this ordinance. Again, it's only been on the market for a month and a half. Let's see if anybody else can do anything better with it. I don't believe this benefits the town at all, benefits only the developer. I think we can do something more beneficial for our town.
Once again, keep the floor open. No further comment? Motion to close?
I think you've got a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, dear. Didn't mean to cut you off.
Sorry. Hi, Karen DeTrolio, 12 Sharon Drive, Whippany.
Oh, hi, Karen. Finally met you.
Yes,
Okay.
nice to meet you. I am, commenting on this ordinance and also on going forward in this town. Also being concerned about, wanting to stay here, have a family here, have kids in the school. I come from the standpoint, I teach AP Environmental Science, and so that is what I know the most about. I don't know a whole lot about the ordinances and the zonings and that type of thing. But what I do know about is environmental issues, and that's something that was mentioned only a really little bit tonight, and it is a huge concern that I have, and I think everyone in this room should also have. The developing that is happening and the, not only just this, but all the other things that are being talked about, they're not going to do anything good for the quality of life in terms of the environment. Something I was just teaching my students this morning was about how pretty much all environmental issues can be linked back to population growth. And the more people you have, the more resources you use, the more pollution that there is. And that's what's happening in this town. Something else I teach my students a lot about is the quality of our drinking water. And what's important for the quality of our drinking water is that the water can infiltrate through the ground, through the soil, and naturally be filtrated through the water cycle. And that's not going to be happening the more that we build, the more impervious surfaces that we have. So I just ask you that, not only with this, but in going forward, that's something that you think about and it's put as more of a priority. Thank you.
There's a whole process in the approval cycle from a planning board's point of view that has to do with environment and compliance with DEP rules. And by the way, Colloid I can point to as a perfect example. The millions of dollars that have been spent in there in what's known as due diligence is to get the property up to a standard that's either residential, and there's different standards. There's standards for residential, there's standards for commercial. Colloid is an example of trying to get property to residential. Several thousand 55-gallon drums were taken out of the ground in Colloid because for years, we here in Hanover Township, we thrived on the fact that we were an industrial town. We made bricks, we made paper, we had chemical industries, et cetera, and before many of the laws that you and I understand today, the way to dispose of waste, et cetera, was put it in a river, throw it in the dirt, and that's it. Now those cleanups mean that some of these property owners are involved in millions of dollars of cleanup. Whippany Paperboard Company has gone through something and I don't have the exact figure, but I'm going to take a stab at the last number I had was something in the neighborhood of $3.5 million of cleanup of the lagoons and the properties itself. You've probably seen a lot of work going on there right now. I'm just filling in some blanks for you. You've seen some plantings going on. You've seen topsoil going in. Finally, that property owner is doing something that they have to comply with before a cutoff deadline with the DEP. It's a shame that they had to have a gun to their head to finally clean the property up to where they did not have to comply with even stronger DEP laws of environmental cleanup for next year. So you see that property being cleaned up, and that's very good. Colloid's the same deal. If the township, that was a brownfield, and if the township had to get involved with the cleanup of that property, I can't guesstimate what the number would have been. So due diligence, environmental cleanups have to be done complies with our engineering department, with our engineer, as well as the state and the county on that. So you can rest assured. And secondly, on our water quality here in Hanover Township, some of the finest wells in the area, Wing Well, Todd Well, et cetera, all come out of Hanover Township. And the American Water Works that we had joined into about 20 years ago now, quality of water in this township, I'll match it against your Poland Spring bottles or against your others any day of the week. The quality is excellent. Wish I could get my wife to drink more of it instead of buying water, for God's sakes. Whoever thought I'd do that? In any event, this gentleman wants to comment. Sure.
Hi, sir. Fareed Sheikh, 35 Windermere Court. I just had one comment. I know there were some comments made earlier about the email that was sent out, whatever people were saying about it, but I think it was great. I think whatever makes the citizens more involved, it's a good thing for the community. I think this is fantastic to be engaged. Wherever it goes, this discourse is good.
Mm-hmm.
This is democracy in action. This separates us from the crazies in the world.
Thank you.
So, great job. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, sum up on this side of the desk. Did we motion for close?
No. Take a motion.
Is there a motion on the floor? No. Accept the motion for close? Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. On the Economic Development Committee and other committees, we've had more discussions about these types of meetings. There was a time when we used to throw a State of Hanover address meeting, and we came together like this, and we spoke about anything and everything that you wanted to speak of. We spoke about zoning, we spoke about potential growth in the township, we spoke about traffic issues, we spoke about road conditions, we spoke about Morristown Airport. And we've got to return more to that. There's a lapse somewhere in here, and I don't know that I'm somewhat responsible for it. And I proposed to the administrator, and I'll be proposing to the Township Committee, it's nice that we have a website. It's nice we put this stuff up on our website. It's nice for those people that do use the website, and I know a lot of you do, but we all don't. We still need some print material. Thanks, Joe. We still need some print material that gets to you quarterly, newsletter, that breaks out what currently is happening, everything from school issues, everything from, improvements in the town, cover it all. And I, for one, would like to start to see that happen again, so it gets to your kitchen table at least once every quarter and keeps you up to date. And then bring that together with notifying you of some general meetings here in this kind of a meeting room where we can have an exchange and you can address the Township Committee on these things. But in any event, having said that, at this juncture, gentlemen, it's 11:30, and I'm going to open it to my Township Committee for comment from committee, if anyone has any thoughts or
Mayor,
John?
if I may?
Oh, I'm sorry, Fred.
Just a couple of comments, if I may. First, I just want to say overall, I think it's worth noting, Hanover Township's such a desirable community that you do have a lot of planning pressures. And that's because of the hard work of not just the residents, but your planning board and your Township Committee. And I understand a lot of the comments that were made tonight, and I think I just want to go over, one was, well, it's not our problem. Well, in a sense it is, because the zoning, you cannot zone for inutility. Because if you do, someone else, it's going to be out of anyone's hands here, is going to place a zone on the property because a property owner is going to say they don't have the ability to develop. And I'm giving you an example where I heard that in the past there was, whether it be an office type site or another type of use or a more intense use that we heard previously. Those type of things, if you cannot zone for a property to have some utility, it could create a problem. Now, I'm never going to make a case for a developer, so I don't want to get into a basis for what someone could do about this particular property. But the facts are that the property itself has been dormant for an excessive period of time. And I understand about, the current zone and some concerns, but those are just the facts. And when we talk about affordable housing, this site doesn't have that component to it. And that, is something that is part of the overall, planning process and sort of the push and pull or the balance that's tried to be struck. And I want to also say that there were comments tonight about, the development and the overdevelopment of things of that nature. But I want to tell you and just share, and it may not be of total relevance to your particular property. But I've sat through cases with respect to, for an example, River Park, where we saw a great town center presentation, and they threw in that after they showed us this entire town center with a firehouse and everything else, that they wanted 2,000 residential units, and I saw the mayor get up and walk out of that presentation, said, forget it. And those are things that aren't necessarily before a board because they never even get there to that point. I sat in court with the acquisition of the Muscarelli tract to stop development, and I also have sat through litigation with respect to River Park and even affordable housing cases, all in defense of to temper and plan development accordingly. And the other thing I want to mention is with respect to the transparency. I understand the comments that were raised, but I want to just say that from a standpoint of what you're participating in this evening, first of all, this really was generated by the fact that there was a prior hearing, a prior public hearing, which many members here participated in the audience, and you're back again this evening. And there was also personal notice served, and in addition, this public hearing, and I've never seen this happen, but it was scheduled at the request of the residents to be moved from August till September so that this discussion could take place. And I also want to say that with respect to the planning board, it's a difficult task, and is one I thought I give a lot of credit because I've never quite seen this where the planning board comes to a public hearing of the governing body and still, whether you agree with it or not, wants to stand up and say to you, here's what we've gone through, here's the process, and here's what we faced, and here's the recommendations that we've made, and here's why. And, you know, that is, to me, you know, from a legal perspective and land use, that's quite a bit of transparency because that's not required anywhere in this hearing type process. And while I speak about the planning board, I'd like everybody to know, because you indicated about wanting to understand the process, if this ordinance is adopted tonight, that is one significant aspect of this development. But the other significant aspect is there's a land use application that will follow. There was never an almost approval. That was about an ordinance. A land use application that will follow means that everyone within 200 feet will receive notice of the application. And it also means that every single aspect of this application will be heard before you as a member of the public. You will have an opportunity to get up and ask questions of the applicant directly. You will have an opportunity to get up and ask questions of the applicant's engineer or planner under oath. And you'll have an opportunity to express certain concerns aesthetically that you said this evening that cannot necessarily be addressed, such as what about buffer? What about landscape? What about the setting? What about parking? What about, you know, space and spacing requirements and things like that? All of those items can be addressed by the planning board in the development process. And quite frankly, again, now this I'll say on behalf of the township, if you're not happy with what is ultimately proposed, you have that opportunity to basically put pressure on the developer to make certain concessions and come and amend their application once they hear that. You have the opportunity to bring in your own experts as well as the township experts will be on hand to hear this case and offer their comments as well, such as the planner and the engineer. So there's much more to the process that's involved before any approvals are given. And with respect to what you see there, that's the maximum drawing, as indicated. But we don't know, and nor have we been provided with actual drainage plans, which are very specific. The drainage requirements and the necessary improvements and the actual engineering that will be required for this site. It's not as if this is what it's going to look like, and you will have a lot of say, and your trusted planning board will have a lot of say as to how it works. And I just wanted to just bring forward the entire process if it goes forward, because the comment was made tonight about, hey, we want to make sure we understand. And this is not the entire process. This does not mean, if this ordinance is adopted, that this development is necessarily approved. And I think that's just important to note. Thank you, Mayor.
I think that accurately lays out the process, and I'm very happy to have tonight members of our board here, members of our planning board, and the chairman here. They've heard your comments, we've heard your comments, regardless of outcome, which will be in a few moments, I would think. I think they're going to take that back. I think some of the comments that I heard from Mr. Mahalko, along with, in my opinion, significant work on landscape, because you're looking at a rather barren, uninteresting layout on this thing. I think that's another whole matter, not for this board, not for this body, but for the planning board, etc. On that note, are there any township committee members?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Faramasca.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to, number one, thank everybody for their participation, for their involvement. This is a good thing. We truly welcome it. This is your community. Please be involved. We have an esteemed colleague representing you in the front of the room. He comes and he visits our meetings. We invite you to come and participate as well. Hey, we've come a long way. We went from 38 to arguably 15, maybe a lower number. The planning board has listened to you. They have truly listened to you. We've moved from what? We moved from what we didn't want. We didn't want townhouses for all the right reasons. We wanted single-family homes. While at the same time, I've heard for some people who live in Windermere, who are my friends, and they're concerned with, I hate seeing what I pull out every morning across the street. It's a blighted condition. Why don't you people do something about it? What we have in front of us is something which potentially will have very little impact upon services. I can't speak to traffic, don't have the crystal ball, but it'll have very little impact to services because the ownership will be a condominium association, so it'll care for itself. The proposed rezone, which the planning board goes through each and every time, is they try to understand, does it conform with an adjoining area? Because often we're here getting cases presented to us saying, this is what we want to do, and this is what it conforms to the area. Well, in this case, the planning board felt that this is very similar to the conforming uses for the Windermere neighborhood, which is a very, very exclusive, high-quality neighborhood in the township. In addition, think about this type of housing. This type of housing is on trend with changing demographics. The days of people marrying early, raising large families, seem to be changing. In fact, brought to was single-family voters represented 42% of those who voted in the last presidential election. It's a huge change in the demography. If this vote is affirmative tonight on the change of zone, we will still have an opportunity to fine-tune clearly this plan. So, the good ideas that have come forward, we'd ask you to come back. I think planning has heard them as well. So it's not what I would call a done deal.
Thank you. Any other members of the committee at this time? None? Hearing none.
One comment I'd like to make is, if this is approved this evening, I would very much ask that Mr. Faramasca, as Director of Planning, and I thank the Planning Board members for being here this evening, that take into consideration a number of really good recommendations that were made here this evening. Okay, I appreciate the people taking the time to come out. I think it's good to have them voice their opinion, their concerns, and I'm really happy that, as I said, that the Planning Board members are here this evening to actually hear where these concerns are coming from. So.
Thanks, George. Okay. All right, gentlemen, at this time, Mr. Administrator, I need a motion.
What is the pleasure of the Township Committee? Is there a motion for adoption?
Yes.
You make the motion?
Yep.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Mr. Capola, seconded by Mr. Faramasca. On roll call for adoption, Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
I guess before I vote, I just want to make a few comments. Perhaps I should have done that a little earlier, but I guess at this late hour, I held my tongue a little too long. Just a quick background, because some mentioned they've lived in town their whole lives. I also have lived in town my entire life, so therefore grew up in the community, always liked the community, chose to live in the community. In terms of, and I'm not going to rebut every point or discuss every point, but just in terms of the school population, when I was at Whippany Park, There were 1,100 students in the school. It was about 260, 270 in my graduating class. I think this year the entire population is about 660 or 670, something like that. So I think it does go in cycles. Overcrowding is a concern. I have a daughter in Mount View. Some of you know that. And when that Shadowbrook or Saddlebrook opened up, there was pandemonium in the neighborhood, and I was quite upset myself. I really was not aware of what was going on over there. I have a daughter in 3rd grade. I heard there was a new 3rd grade class being added. You know, there was a lot of yelling and screaming going on in my house. You know, you're on the committee, why can't you stop this? Quite frankly, I called a friend who's an attorney to see what could be done about it. He said, you know what? Everybody's going to get all emotional, all up in arms, but ultimately, and this particular attorney lives in Livingston, he said, you know what, at the end of the day, cooler heads will prevail and it probably won't have a big impact. And as it turned out, my daughter has 18 students in her class, and each and every one of them was in the school last year. So not one new kid. And after all the upset and excitement, my wife even said, and she tends to get emotional, you know, where are the new kids? We know there are some new kids in the school, but why did we add another section if there's not one new student in her class? So my attorney friend was right. At least initially, you know, it hasn't had the impact. I think someone mentioned earlier there's 178 units. In fact, I believe the number is 74 units that are over there. So, you know, with COA, I'm not going to belabor the point on COA or anything else. But, you know, we want to be very careful about what goes on in town, and I think some of the emotion that's coming out tonight is based upon what transpired over there. I see this as a different development. Single-family units in the $600,000 to $700,000 range. I think it's been pretty carefully thought out. Once again, as our attorney mentioned, it's up to, I think we're up to 15 units or 16 units, but you know, there's nothing to say that when it goes for final approval that the number 13 or 14, Mr. Mahalko made a very good point. You know, one of my concerns, and again, I grew up in town, I'll try to land the plane here quickly, but when this was a slaughterhouse, you know, there were often times where there were goats running down Jefferson Road. We all know that. Bleeding.
We got good at catching them.
You know, we did have to catch them. Not that that was the worst thing in the world. If this gets voted down, and I think we've mentioned this previously, they would be allowed to open that slaughterhouse again. No one wants that. We've gotten a lot of complaints from people in town. Why can't you do something about that slaughterhouse property? It's an eyesore. Why can't we do something? Why can't we develop it? And then we get somebody who wants to come in and develop it. And the response is, well, yeah, but we don't want that. So there's that fine line. We got to balance things out here. I don't think I'd like to see any more vacant office space there. Would I like to see just a handful of homes? Yeah, that would probably be ideal. But from economic feasibility, you know, from what we've heard, to put a road in and put sewers in and put sidewalks in, you know, with the cost of the property and everything else. And I think our attorney kind of summed it up that, you know, if we don't make our own conscious decision about what we're going to do with this property, someone might come in and make the decision for us. So, you know, again, I'm jumping around. I apologize for rambling. Just wanted to give a little background, and I will vote yes.
Paula?
I work for Hanover Pharmaceutical, and the goats did come by the back door on many days, many occasions. Yeah, I will vote yes, but as I stated, I'm very adamant about Mr. Faramaska as Director of Planning, along with the Planning Board members, to truly take into consideration a number of very good recommendations that were made this evening.
Mr. Francioli?
Aye. The recommendations that were made this evening, Mr. Administrator, I'd like you to commit them to a memo, and I'll help sort that out with you. I'd like that memo delivered to the chairman for consideration, so we'll do that. Okay. Ordinance passes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. At this hour, gentlemen, any other business from the Township Commission?
Officially vote on this.
Do
we have official vote?
Yeah.
Yes,
You need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Good night, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.